Good evening and welcome to the September 3rd meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. First item is called to order. Mr. Shepherd will be a full member tonight. Roll call, please.
Shepherd here.
At present.
All your cameras need to be, microphones are off, so please, thank you.
Mine was off.
All I could see was Joyce's from here. Thank you.
Capiello here.
Alan, present. Driscoll here. Next item is review and approval of the minutes from August 27th, 2024. Any comments or corrections?
Tonight, there are no minutes as well.
I thought I was the only one that didn't get the packet. Okay. You want to postpone that until we have copies so you can look at it? Is that the consensus of the board?
I think that'd be good.
Okay,
I was gonna say, are there?
we'll bump that to the
Minutes?
next meeting.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Yeah, that's fine.
With the short turnaround, there were no minutes in there.
Yeah,
No minutes to
I was
review.
gonna say, I just didn't have any minutes to
Therefore,
review.
no minutes to approve.
Number 4, Class 6 private road application for map 261 lot 59.
I think everyone remembers from last meeting, the Karen Gould one that got kicked back. I've added maps, tax maps, and relevant information to clarify any confusion there might have been. Happy to elaborate on the ADU thing if you still have questions on that.
Oh, yeah. Note that Bob Tessier is clocked in.
Welcome, apologize. Thanks for joining us.
Any questions on this application?
The only, the document I got before, it said the applicant said that the road was under policy. He's aware that she's going to upgrade the road, right? Okay.
She was under the impression that it was. She's been told that it's wide and good until that most recent comment from Mark that was vague, in my opinion. So she's happy to do whatever it takes.
So it'll be 18,
16, 2 and 2.
16, 2 and 2, all the way to your house.
She's not here. She's 80 plus years old and will not attend the meetings.
I didn't want to be surprised.
Nope, she's not.
She's seeing a vote.
She said she wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. She'd be so aggravated because she feels like she's been erroneously held up by some people. She won't name names and no one here. So I'm not pointing fingers, but she's frustrated and, she's older and all that stuff. So try to help her out and get it.
Just don't want her to be surprised.
Yeah, nope, she's aware.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we do have people in the gallery that would like to comment, just so you know. When you get to that point.
Oh, I'll open it to public hearing.
Public comment.
Please come forward. Just name and address. I can either sit at the table or there, whatever it's convenient. Okay,
Is the green light on?
green light.
Oh, I'm gonna have to turn the power on. Yeah, that's all right.
Sometimes the switch on the bottom may not.
I'm Amy Jones and I live at 20 Valentine Drive, and we are not direct abutters of this particular parcel, but we do live on Holiday Lakeshore Drive. My question, I guess in regards to the tax maps, anyone that is familiar with that particular area or who has dealt with the surveyors in the past knows that there's a considerable amount of inaccuracy for both lot lines and ownership for all the parcels within Holiday Lakeshore Drive. I've brought a couple of deeds, one really important deed, which shows was a quitclaim deed from Brookwood Park Shores that sold the remaining 131 acres that were undeveloped to Karen Gould's. The current application does reference the correct deed, but the original application for the ADU, which is now in existence, references 319 Holiday Lakeshore Drive, which was a parcel that was originally purchased by Ben Gilman, actually previous to him, by one of our previous police chiefs, which developed a home that Ben then purchased. This particular parcel that was referenced in the original application for the ADU is only one small lot within the large collection of properties. Those properties that were on the correct deed that is on the new application for this building permit are subject to a restrictive use, and that in perpetuity the land is not to be developed. Not entirely sure how the ADU went in to begin with. Knowing that information, to say that we're concerned is an understatement, and that it sets a precedent for continued development with those merged lots together. So I'd like the town to review that. I also have another concern that I'm not really sure what is being reviewed in this application process. There are some potential that those lots may be buildable, and I could absolutely be incorrect, but I think it's important for the town to review that information before they make a decision. That's all. Would you like these?
Sure, thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. Oh, actually, we were gonna-
Does the zoning administrator have a comment to make?
I'd have to see what she produced for a deed. I know that Ms. Gould owns 161 acres that that parcel is on. The product of the ADU was involuntary merger between those two lots by our town planner in 2013 possibly, that they were unmerged. She owns both of those parcels currently. And I know there are lot line disputes between boundaries, but the town lawyer has counseled on this and others that those lot lines are in dispute between two people and not purview of the planning board. And I don't know as though none of them would affect the setbacks for that home. And I don't think, if you're talking about the Wilson property, if that was in conservation, but the house, the ADU house portion was not in conservation at the time the ADU was permitted, it was merged with that other tax map. But I'd have to see what you're referring to see if I'm wrong or if that's old information, different information. I can't speak to it.
The current deed reads that those particular blocks or parcels all part of the original 131 purchase that she made in 2015 after the merger.
But it's a 161 acre piece now that she's added to, and she's putting it into permanent conservation with the federal government for research.
I would dare to say that information deserves a little bit more.
Which part?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I can't hear the applicant at all online. So if she could, I'm sorry, if you could speak a little bit clearer into the mic for the record, please.
Is the green button? Oh, grab another. Oh, great.
Thank you. Can I?
Probably repeat it for the record.
So I think that deserves a little bit more review. I know that I can't necessarily ask a question to the board, but I would ask, where in the process does the town get involved? How far do they look into whether or not the parcel that is being applied to is being referenced correctly? Are you only reviewing the information as it's presented by the current owner, or is anyone researching whether or not that
Well,
information is
the zoning
correct?
administrator said, we talked to our town attorney, and it seems to be a dispute between two parties, and the town cannot get involved in that.
We,
So-
I'm unaware that particular parcel is part of any disputes. In fact, the remainder of our subdivision is actually working on a separate block of lots to just repair or correct lot lines.
Listen up.
I was gonna say, if you look at the next to last paragraph on the deed, it talks about the restrictive easement, which is the comments where I'm always bringing up, like, the review of the deed should be part of this process. It's in Joyce's hands right now.
Yes.
Subject to the restrictive use limitation easement whereby the property shall be maintained in perpetuity in an undeveloped and natural condition without there being conducted therefore any for-profit in industrial, residential, or commercial activities except as described herein, provided such uses shall not degrade the conservation purpose of the restricted use limitation easement.
Does the town planner have any comments?
I think Jamie covered them all. At first I thought she was talking about the other parcels that are around that area. And that will have to be decided by the courts for the boundary lines. She's just talking about in general that big parcel. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything else to add for that.
Thank you. Is there a motion to continue this case so that the town attorney can look at all of this?
Oh, I don't know if that's a purview. I would make your recommendations for the select board, would be my recommendation. I don't know is that a town attorney is gonna get in a deed dispute. There's an existing
Deed is
dwelling.
deed.
No, there's an existing dwelling on the property.
But there's an existing dwelling that was put on the property under the pretense that it was a merged lot and it
Was a
was an
merged lot.
ADU.
Marcia
if-
Gas has involuntary merged those lots.
I understand, but if the deed was restricted to begin with, it means it was an improper build and technically any person could go sue the town or the person to have it removed.
But it's the select board's purview to do that at this point,
I-
not yours. You're looking at access for this lot.
You're right. And my comment is in response to what you're stating. And from my standpoint, I would make a motion to kick it to the select board with a recommendation to not approve it and have the town attorney review it based on the deed, based on the presented materials of a deed restriction.
May I
Where-
just add one comment if that's appropriate? I think it's important as a landowner in town for landowners to be allowed to do with their parcel as they please. I do think that's incredibly important. Should she have, maybe the correct deed that doesn't have the restrictions on there, then maybe that could just be corrected in this process. But it unfortunately does reference that deed with those limitations. And I'm very disheartened as a resident that it got this far.
Is there a second to Mr. Knapp's?
Second.
Roll call.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you close public comment? Can you
Oh,
please
I'm
close
closing
public
public
comment before
comment.
making a motion? Thank you.
Sorry. What was the motion?
The motion is to send it to the select board with a recommendation to deny it until it has been reviewed by the town's attorney.
Can you
Or-
make merit on the rest of the case so it doesn't have to come back for the rest?
For clarity of the deed, and upon that, then it would be resubmitted to the select board for approval.
So if you have no comments on the road access.
We've already.
Yeah, we've gone
reviewed the
through
road
that. I
access.
don't think, no, it's just this issue, let them hand it to them to
Yeah,
Right.
look
I mean,
at.
I think that it complies with the
It-
policy. If she upgrades the road, it complies with policy. So I
Right.
think that is a low risk.
Right, so
Thanks.
our motion would, once that is straightened out, if that's a problem, then it would proceed to a building permit.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, who
Yeah,
made
I made the
Randy
motion.
and-
Wait a minute, this town planner has a comment.
No, I just have a question, just make sure that I understand it correctly, that there's, the board has no issue with the applicant as presented as far as the road improvements. However, recommend that the select board does not approve the application until the, clarification of the deed has been remedied, essentially.
That's
Is
Correct.
that what I'm hearing? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Who was the second one, sorry?
Bob.
Seconded by
Oh, you do.
Ron.
Okay, I guess it was Ron.
I came in late. It's quiet.
Roll call.
Shepherd, aye.
Napa.
Masucci, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Yes, you're right. Allard, aye.
Driscoll, aye. Okay, so it's going to them. There's the,
Appreciate it.
okay. The next item on the agenda, item number 5, a work session on zoning amendments. Should also mention on September 9th, the Master Plan Zoning Subcommittee is meeting with the Select Board at 5 PM. If any other members would like to attend, you're welcome to show up.
We would encourage you to
I
come.
missed it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, on September 9th, the next select board meeting, the master plan zoning subcommittee of 4 members here are going to talk to the select board about what we've processed so far. And if any other members want to attend, they're welcome to join us, 5 PM. So we'll be meeting an hour and a half before their scheduled meeting. Okay, work session on zoning amendments.
It would be good if you could make.
You'll note that at your place, Ron had submitted some potential things to discuss. If you have any questions on those, check with Ron.
Well, we want to go, we're gonna go through this sequentially?
Yeah, I think we'll do that. And if anybody else has notes or comments, I'd actually, once I'm done with you, I want to work off Vanessa Price's sheet and go sequentially.
It's not related to the work session items, but we were presented with some notes about a proposed regulation, but I can't read it all, so I was curious what the balance.
From our public meeting that we had.
That's the best I could get it to come up. Yeah.
Because it is a little difficult.
There's whole sections that are kind of missing, and I can improvise the language, but I'm not positive on the language.
Yeah, maybe we can contact him and get some more clarification. Essentially, what he's saying is,
Give you mine. Legible. It just wasn't.
Does all the language carry? Because
Oh, I don't know.
you're
I think it's just
missing
cut off.
like
Yeah.
whole sections of
Yeah.
what's commented
We
on
can-
there.
Well,
could we contact him and maybe have him resend it?
Can we just copy it? Usually if you highlight it, copy it and repaste it into either Excel or Word or.
Or printed in a different orientation.
Right.
Well, before we, I think I got the gist of what he's asking for.
Right.
I guess my question would be on, if you look at site plan regulations, page 25, the one with package we got here. Stormwater management plan.
Not our zoning ordinance, you want site
Site,
plan?
site plan.
Site plan. 4.3, stormwater management plan.
Yep, it kind of says that, I think. I think what he's asking for is already part of the regulations. If you look at,
Increase, decrease, or modify, or alter the patterns of stormwater drainage.
yeah,
Does that kind of do it?
I think that's what he's asking for. It's already there.
And he wasn't, I don't have his verbiage in front of me, but he was talking about
He,
rate.
he wants he wants pre-project and post-project runoff to be the same.
Yeah.
And my point is, if you read 4.3, I think it already says that.
Yep.
Increase, decrease, or modify or alter the normal.
But I wonder if he's really reacting to some specific development that's gone on.
Probably, but you know,
It'd be useful to know that just for information, because we
So,
could take a look at it.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, I think he was asking us to put in volume and duration as additional language. That's my take on it.
well, not in normal patterns. I mean,
Increased volume and duration can have negative effects downstream.
Vanessa, do you have that email with you that you could send and I could read if this helps for clarity?
Which email are you looking at?
From Mr. Jeffrey.
Steve Jeffries.
I had
From the-
scanned it. I can scan it and send it. Cause
Which?
he passed it out at a meeting that we had recently, and the copy I had was in my file, and so I just did a picture for it, but I can forward that. That's what you're talking about, right? Just his letter? Okay, hold on.
He have sent it to me.
I mean, if it's over 20,000 square feet, it gets an AOT,
Right.
which kind of, you know, sedimentation control, flow attenuation, all that's part of AOT. It's all part of stormwater management. I mean, I think it's already there.
I think everything addressed in here is addressed here.
I think so too.
What is AOT? Sorry.
Alteration of
Alteration of
terrain.
terrain.
If you modify a certain amount of property, you gotta That's state.
100,000
And
square
that's
feet.
state, that's a state permit, so we,
Right.
we have no
Oversight.
control over that,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
There's one project we're looking at now, I'm not supposed to name. Originally, it was configured, they were gonna let each landowner handle stormwater as the property was sold and houses built. A new plan they may have sent to us consolidates areas, and they have forced to do an AOT, and now they have a very robust stormwater management plan.
Gotcha.
If you look at where the old units were in certain segments as they are now, they're putting a lot of effort in an area of 3 houses where there were 5 or 6 under the old plan, but they weren't gonna do anything. So it just means the AOT, while it's wonderful, we need to do something where if somebody attempts to do this again,
Yeah, I would agree.
we have some control, not listening, saying, well, whoever buys that has to take care of it.
no, remember, there is language that says
But that-
development, proposed development. And that's where we push back on them aggressively.
we did, yeah.
Because,
But I'm saying,
to me, it was like,
we didn't have to have this fight for
you
23
got a,
months.
you got a conventional subdivision plan. You have, sedimentation control, you have flow control, all that kind of stuff. And you got a conservation plan, you have none of that. So, but I think the development or potential development, proposed development is.
Well, conservation subdivision always defers back to the.
Right, the regular
subdivision plan.
subdivision rules. You're supposed to follow the
Gotta
subdivision.
follow it. I know they said section 11 doesn't apply to them, but we. pushed
Well,
back
they
on
said that
too.
they needed an AOT because they weren't disturbing it that much in the revised plan. The AOT is what pushed them to do all that control.
Right. But we need some tool to not let that happen.
I think it's in there.
I think in a subsequent email, Mr. Jeffrey wanted the words in parentheses, rate, volume, and duration to make that clear. Are we seeing any
Okay.
changes?
But it was CMA, doesn't it? That gets all reviewed, doesn't it? The runoff, the volume. I mean, if the volume is increased, you're gonna have erosion control. You have erosion problems. We have erosion control plans already that have, detention ponds, retention ponds, whatever, that control the flow of volume off the property. I think it's already there. That's,
And
And so my question is, would it strengthen it in any way to have?
And just to know, I mean, when you're talking about some of the other developments, you can't really do stormwater on individual lots. That's the reason why the other one that we're not naming, you wouldn't look at individual lots for stormwater. It's for road and infrastructure. That's when you typically look at stormwater management.
There was no plan. that
Or
was
else every
presented
house that
would
comes in
do
for a
anything.
building permit.
subdivision, I think he's looking at for individual properties.
I'm saying the referenced one that was the reference,
The reference. I
the
gave
reference
to-
one.
Do you think he's asking individual houses?
I don't know what he's asking for.
Yeah, but it's not clear.
I'm just saying for stormwater on individual lots, you don't typically do site review on individual lots. And that's why, that was the kind of the caveat of the one we're referencing.
Lots we never see. We don't see.
Right, so if a development is a road front subdivision with no interior roads, you wouldn't see stormwater management because they're all individual lots. There's no infrastructure to,
Individual property wouldn't come from the planning board anyway.
Well,
so think of the first iteration of the one we're not mentioning. They were all road frontage lots. So there'd be no infrastructure to do stormwater management. That's why there was no stormwater management on that development.
So on that note, when you think about individual lots that are already there, somebody could come in, get their building permit, and they can eradicate that site to go in there and do whatever. And I'm assuming through the building process, they have to do silt fence. You have requirements from the building end that they've got to do, but how does that get managed? Because you can decimate areas, and I can tell you, in a property up by me up north, they came in, they tore down a little cottage, they blasted in this massive house, and they pitched everything to run forward, and it all runs down across the road and dumps into a neighbor's yard.
And that, yes, that is the consequence of some of it, but the only place that I believe we have protection is in the shoreline protection zone and, above that DES. But on regular lots, it doesn't come in, it's not in the building code, it's nowhere that you have to, put up silt fences or wind protection or erosion control. Timber harvesting requires, that's in our regulations that you put, the road thing to brush up your tires, but,
Right, the rumble.
because I think I would venture to guess that it comes from the state down, that it's restricted, that you can only have so much control over individual lots because they don't want you, some want, some don't, going into everybody's backyard and deciding what they do, but.
Well, the
He
state has,
says amend subdivision regulations. He's not talking individual lots.
Do other communities regulate individual
I-
lots?
I can't speak to that. I don't know for sure.
some of them,
I believe some would.
Is this something we should bring up as we're talking about conservation subdivisions and things?
It is,
Add that
yeah.
To our list.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's
Right.
also we're talking about individual homes. Do we have any?
It's part of the septic design.
Right.
Yeah,
The septic design will designate wetlands have to be silt fenced
protected.
or.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Are you guys going off of notes, just discussion, or are you going off of Ron's thing, or still on Stephen Jeffries'
haven't
thing? I
started.
didn't know.
Yeah, we haven't even started.
We haven't even started
We
yet.
started
Okay.
with Mr. Jeffrey's
My
comment.
plan, Vanessa,
Okay.
is to use your August 29th list and come up.
Yeah,
with-
if the board doesn't mind entertaining doing that first, unfortunately, I'm limited to time. And that way, I mean, I'll definitely look back
Right,
at this.
Vanessa
but,
has to leave at 8 o'clock, so she's got an hour, so let's.
Well, that's Vanessa's problem.
After 7:30.
Yeah, well, it will end up being my problem later. So,
You did that loud mouth. August, yeah, that's hers. Just make sure.
before I start on that one, I just emailed one to Jamie that I did not put on that list. That was my error, but I wanted us to look at doing a 4.2.2 parentheses 5 for the maximum building size in non-residential village district. It talks about having a conditional use permit, and that's not necessarily appropriate. And the town attorney had advised to relook at this and have the board discuss, as the CUP is not an appropriate vehicle for that because it's not innovative land use control. Does recognize that many times you see CUPs for these that are not innovative land use controls. And so she suggested us taking a look at that and not having it be a conditional use permit, and to go through more of like the ZBA process. I'm not sure why that was originally put as a CUP. So I wanted to bring that one up as well. That was something that the
Before we move
board
on from
wanted to
that,
identify.
Rather than
Yeah.
suggest we look at it, wasn't she give us a suggestion how to do it?
So I did forward something to Jamie really fast right now, is basically to take the language out. Here, let me go to let me share my screen. That might be easier.
Which one is this? 4.2 point what?
2 parents.
So it's 4 point, I don't know if, hopefully you can see it. I think I'm sharing it
Under land
correctly.
tracks.
4.2.2 parentheses 5 for maximum building size.
There's like,
Basically to eliminate,
Zoning.
Go under zoning.
let's say that's.
yeah, because that's what we're here for, is
Okay,
a zoning
maximum building
amendment.
Structure not exceeded footprint of
Yeah.
50,000 square feet.
4.2.2 parents 5.
Building footprint. If the conditional use permit is granted.
2.2.
Does it take everything after the non-residential structure shall not exceed a footprint of 50,000 square feet in size, period, and take
Period.
everything else out?
And then just send it for a variance from the ZBA.
Correct, if that's something that, that they would want to do.
Hang on, can you say that one more time?
I'll take a stab at it, Vanessa.
Yeah.
The language she was saying is after the 50,000 square foot in size, remove everything, so there would be no exception. And then if anybody came in looking for a bigger building, they'd just be directed to the ZBA for a variance.
Is that clear to everyone?
Why?
Because the attorney doesn't believe the conditional use is the proper vehicle for an increase in size, because it's not, it's deviating from your approved zoning regulation, so it would be a ZBA approval would be more appropriate.
Well, how is it deviating from the regulation if it's already approved and written in here by our regulation?
The conditional use
It
permit
should not be a
vehicle.
conditional use
Conditional use
permit.
part.
Right.
is not appropriate for this. That's. what-
It would be a variance from the zone,
It's
ZBA,
it's
is what she,
ZBA,
is what the
yeah.
lawyer had noted.
The lawyer and I often disagree.
Gets it out of ballpark. I'm happy with that.
And I battle there on a few.
So why do you disagree?
Because, and I guess here's my take on it is there is anybody who works on the manufacturing, industrial storage, any of that capacity would potentially have a desire for a building larger than 50 square feet. So now you're going to kick them to the ZBA to go through it as opposed to just submit their application as
Yeah,
noted.
I think it comes from a recent application where they got an extremely large building.
Yeah, probably.
And so because it's in the village district,
It's not
I think-
appropriate for the village district.
I think it's
Yep.
not appropriate for the village, and so a recent application spurred this change possibly, much like many of
No
the change,
names will be mentioned.
many of the changes you're gonna discuss tonight, so.
But Andy, we're only really moving it from planning board to
It's
ZBA.
DBA, you know.
It's the only
Right.
change.
Well, I guess what I look at is it's adding a fee and a roadblock in along the way as opposed to
Oh, the
just
roadblock now,
presenting
roadblock
it.
now. We're the roadblock.
Uh,
We're making the ZBA.
But
the
it's still gotta come back.
The CUP, there's also a fee associated with
We wanna get
that
rid of 50,000 square
application.
Wait a minute, Vanessa had something to say. Pardon?
I was just
Go ahead.
saying, as far as the fees, there's still charge a fee for a conditional use permit as well.
Right,
that's
but you're
true.
getting a ZBA fee and a planning board fee now.
Yep.
Yeah, less money.
That's where we get the bucks.
It. I don't know.
I'm happy
So
to be the
your
person that
proposal
points
to
out
keep it here.
hypocrisy.
Yeah, I
So-
don't know why. If
So
you
I
don't
guess
want,
saying,
I guess.
what I'm trying to do at this meeting is trying to firm down some more things and regulations. If you guys want to table it and discuss this later, we can.
Well,
We don't have very many work sessions to work on our zoning amendments because we have our CIP coming up as well. And not that I'm trying to push, but for certain things that we have talked about before, if this is something that the board wants to support, can we discuss that this change either yes or no, and then we can move forward with the other ones that we want to discuss?
And this may help clarify a little bit. A conditional use permit allows specific land use not generally permitted in the zoning district. A variance grants exceptions to zoning regulations. So where the use would be permitted and the size is what the exception is, it would be appropriate for a ZBA approval as opposed to a conditional use, which would be something that's not allowed in that zone. And then you want to do something in that zone that's not allowed. That's what the lawyer's commenting on.
But it is allowed in the zone.
Right, so that's why it's a ZBA approval, because it's allowed in the zone, but you want the size to be bigger than the regulations allow. If it were not allowed in that zone, then it would be a conditional use permit.
But the current regulation does allow it. It just requires that it has to be approved by the
Mr.
board.
This is something, when I was first on the planning board, Mr. Jeffries offered his insight on this. It's use, which is manufacturing, not size of building. So the use is, if manufacturing is allowed and zoning says 50,000 and you want to go 60,000, then ZBA would give you relief from size. If it was manufacturing was allowed, but you wanted to do elderly care and it's not allowed, that's where the conditional use would be appropriate. Because you want elderly care in that zone that is not allowed.
Give use, that size.
So it's a use thing, not a size. That's the.
Right, which I would think that the planning board would have relief on the size and the conditional use would be at the ZBA.
But what are we talking about in terms of cost? Is that really a huge issue in these cases?
Probably not. It's just another barrier and roadblock.
Couple of $100
that's being
maybe, who
removed.
knows, right? That's.
350 or
Yeah,
whatever.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a cost thing. It's a
Right.
barrier.
Are we ready to move
Yeah,
on?
I get that.
Have we resolved it or we got fronted?
No,
You can talk more.
I think it should.
I would suggest if the board would like to vote to move forward to have it be considered for our zoning agenda. That way I can produce the language for it. Or if the board feels that they don't want this to move forward, then it's a moot point.
I'll make a motion to change 4.2.2 parentheses 5 in the zoning ordinance. I'll second that. Oh, sorry. To make the change that after the fourth line after 50,000 square feet, everything after that, that being if a conditional use permit is granted, the planning board, see section 3.4, and said structures is also compliance with design guidelines prescribed in site plan regulations. That part would all be removed. Is there a second? Bob?
Bob.
I'll second it, but I just want to clarify. I think what Vanessa's saying is you're going to put a period after sides, the very first line, not the fourth.
Correct.
Oh,
Just the first sentence would remain.
Right.
oh, okay,
I'll second that.
okay. I'm sorry, I had the wrong 50,000. Okay. Roll call?
Shepherd, I understand it's a roadblock, but it's also not one that's frequently, I don't think, to date used. And so, you know, as we go through this, maybe we look at this again in the future, if that makes sense. So Shepherd,
Nap nay, because I'm not fully sold on it at this point.
Lucici.
Capiello, aye.
Tessie, aye.
Driscoll, aye. Okay,
Was everyone else all set with?
okay, Ron, did you want to do yours and we'll,
Well, I think you wanted to do Vanessa's because she's short on time.
oh, right, that's true. Okay, let's get into Vanessa's August 29th one. The first item is identify steep slopes and then a definition for steep slopes.
So this is yeah, this
ahead,
is something that
Vanessa.
can work. I'm sorry. I didn't
Go
mean to
ahead.
interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
No,
There's something
go
I
ahead.
can work on unless anybody else has comments to add this. I know we talked about it last year about adding in, and it seemed more prevalent this year that this is something that the board wanted to look at. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I had looked up a lot in about, I guess, 35 communities that have deep slope or ordinances, or actually a lot of them are overlay districts. And I was suggesting maybe we want to consider creating a steep slopes overlay district, which covers the whole town. Like some of our articles 8 to 13 that do everything from, you know, wetlands and so forth. And then under the purpose and intent, which always is required for number one, is we start with something. In other words, this would be a placeholder that we could add to over the successive years. And steep slopes would be described in item number 2 as slopes greater than 15% to comply with all of the regulations other towns do in the state. Very steep slopes are slopes greater than 25%. That would also require us to update our subdivision regulations, 11.4 parentheses 4 from 35 down to 25%. So that was my thinking, an overlay district that we could. The primary thing to worry about, of course, is what we've been talking about, drainage and stormwater. So any comments?
That's the why.
That would be in our purpose and intent to start. We could always add to any of these items as all of our other regulations for overlay districts do. Any comments?
I don't have a comment, but I have a question really.
Yeah.
Our regulations right now say you can't put a structure on slopes more than 35%.
Right.
Are we talking about, we're talking about 15 and 25%. I don't know where we're gonna land on those. Just for structures, or are we gonna?
The structures would be the 25, the
Structures would be 25?
very steep slope. That's what everybody seems to use.
Okay,
But you have to recognize for other purposes for drainage, the steep slope start at 15%. So
but what
that
would
in
be
every
covered by 15%, I guess, is my question.
storm drainage and stormwater management. But essentially, that's where you'll see a lot of it, right? I mean, that's where everybody in these other towns that I went through.
Yeah, for clarification, I guess, my question, and I'm sorry, Ron, if I didn't give you a chance to answer, is, so are you saying you can't use them for development purposes?
That could be part of your uplands and everything.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they could be.
'Cause I didn't know if
Yeah,
it was-
not excluded, no,
You know, people can still
Right.
chop them right down, so there's no slopes.
right.
How
That's
would you,
essentially,
how would you use it as part of your uplands? Because at 35%,
no, well, no, well,
gotta be a
no, I'm
mountain
talking,
goat
I
to-
thought the discussion was on the 15%. That's what's confusing. Steep slopes start at 15, presumably to 24%. And beyond that is when serious things can happen. That's why they restricted the structures. To put a house in them that would require a vast amount of cut and fill just to have a flat area to put a septic system and everything in. But that's essentially why they deny having it on 25% slopes. 35 is an outlier, and I know where that ever came from because, that's.
I guess
Ron, you had a comment. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
got a question. I mean, in our regulations, I think for what you can use for uplands, steep slopes are excluded, but we don't define what those are.
Right. That's why
So-
we're trying to define them in this
We
overlay.
already
which-
say we can't do 30 structures over 35, at 35. If we do structures, say, change that to 25.
Which was my suggestion to update
Okay.
the subdivision to
And
run
then-
rule 4.
Would we define you can't use any over 15?
You can use it. It's just that you have to be aware. In other words,
But I
when
don't-
somebody comes in with a plan,
I'm confused what that
And-
means, John. I don't know what that means. You have to be
okay,
aware of
they
it.
come in with a plan and they do a topographic area.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be helpful if when we look at it to see which of the 15% and which of the
So
25%,
Identify.
to identify
So
them?
put it on the print, says identify 15% or greater.
Right,
Okay, I got it.
that's all? That was your.
Simple question.
okay.
I just want to know what the heck
Okay.
we're doing with the number.
Well, I would think it would be helpful, particularly when we get out into that one that we shall not name. That had the 100 and something homes.
Right.
They had an area.
And so that's why the question, so 671 in subdivision says land unsuitable for development due to the presence of poorly drained soils, blah, 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 steep slopes. So if an applicant comes in and says, I'm gonna cut these slopes down to put houses on it, you're okay, but if or are you saying,
These are things we
This-
have to work out. I'm talking about
I
putting
think
this in as a
that's the
place
question,
center.
right?
So
A
that
single
it would be
line.
in for zoning, not in
Yeah, zoning,
those
right.
regulations first. It'd
So
have to be.
what he's saying
This
is,
is in zoning.
when you bring it to us, on your topographicals, you have to hatch with a 15% or greater rock. Just for,
It will give us some idea. It said, well, that could potentially be a stormwater issue.
I mean, you can kind of tell now by how close the topo lines are, but
Yeah.
you
well,
don't know what's over 15% or not.
Yeah, and some of these topo lines get really, it's supposed to be 2 feet lines. They kind of merge on some of the plans.
Okay.
I'm not interested in getting into 15 sections under this. Let's just create the overlay. That's my point. We can add
So-
to it after that. What do you think about Vanessa? Is that worth the effort? or
So,
just-
yeah, so you're asking for like an overlay district. I think I need a little bit more information, but also to add a definition for the steep slope.
Right.
Okay, so we can look at doing a definition for that, and then we can discuss, there might be more discussions of other overlay districts tonight, so I'll put that on a different part,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that sounds like that's what
Okay,
is, if everybody is in agreement with that moving forward.
so that's off your list of topics for.
Is the
steep
board in
slopes.
agreement with
Anybody
that
else want to have
direction?
comments on steep slopes?
We want this
Off
review,
of Vanessa's list?
we want to just confirm what the definition is of a steep slope.
So,
I just wanted to know if we identified steep slopes as 15 to 24, what happens if you're in that steep slope? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Okay, we've identified it. Now what? You can't build there, you can't put roads there. I mean, why are we identifying it if we're not gonna have any action?
Mhm.
We're just putting out blueprints for informational purposes? Are we saying you can't build there? What exactly is the purpose?
Well, under 671 parents 3, it specifically says, and it references steep slopes. And it says, shall not be approved for development unless the applicant can present satisfactory evidence or data to the board establishing the methods that will be used to overcome such conditions and their adequacy. So it does address it.
Right.
So this identifies it, and that provision, which we don't have a percentage now attached to it. That would
wait,
now
are
be-
you looking at
Well, yeah.
subdivision, or are you
Subdivisions,
looking
yeah.
at
so going
zoning?
back to John's point.
Because we're
adding a
focusing on
definition- Sorry, Vanessa.
at zoning right now.
Right, but
I understand that they relate, but in our zoning, we don't have anything other
That's
than,
kind of the point.
yeah,
I think
anything
should go
other
into
than
both.
in the conservation
Should go into both
subdivision.
And be consistent.
Yeah, we don't have covenant in subdivision either.
Right. So even that
Right.
language, if it were to be put under this thing, it would make them consistent with what we're
Right.
trying to do.
Well, we say steep slopes, but
Gotcha.
at his point, we don't identify what steep slopes are. So we at least say 15 to 25% is what steep slopes is. That's a step forward. I think it's a good thing.
Mhm.
So,
And very steep slopes is over the 25.
Right.
Right.
25
So
or
the,
greater.
where we say can't build over
Or
35, we
greater
change it to
than
25.
20.
Right, yeah.
So-
That is,
Alright.
once again, that is in subdivision under.
Yeah.
Pretty sorry.
671 parents 3.
So for use in zoning, the 3 spots that shows up, a yield plan,
it's all in conservation subdivision, most of it.
steep slopes.
11.4, parentheses
11.
4 is with the 35 and the 25.
In the zoning?
in zoning, because
In-
Vanessa's trying to focus us on zoning.
I know.
And so to add a definition to zoning, because if someone comes to me and I say zoning says nothing on steep slopes, that doesn't seem steep to me. I'm going to be the person with the first person they're gonna ask what the definition of steep slopes is. And if it hasn't been predetermined for you guys to put it in zoning or the voters, is gonna clarify that issue.
Yeah.
What are you referencing? There is no 11.4 in zoning.
I didn't say zoning. I said it also complies with another subdivision item under
Oh.
11.
Oh, we're still in subdivision.
Well,
We're trying
we-
back to zoning.
We
we're
need to
trying
get back to zoning. We need to focus on zoning.
Yes.
So for,
Vanessa, I was just thinking some of that language you might be able to.
you missed
switch
me, didn't
over,
you? I
that's
could
all.
tell.
Go ahead, sorry.
So I'm hoping this is sharing it correctly, but I have the definition for a steep slope, that we kind of went over and doing a quick search on it. Steep slope is a hillside with a grade of 15% or more, which means the elevation increases by 15 feet for every 100 feet of horizontal distance. Is that something that the board agrees with that?
Yes, that comes from the ITRAC form from
Mm-hmm.
2007. I'll pass it around. Everybody's looking. at these.
Okay.
Well, so is that really any different than like our slope definition that we have currently in our subdivisions?
We don't have a definition in zoning.
We're trying to get something in zoning, even if we grab something from
Right,
subdivision.
but would we
move
not
it
take
over.
that and
No,
move it over?
when the zoning administrator
can.
is asked to make a determination on steep slopes, it's to me to decide what that is at this point, unless a previous decision has been made, and then I'll make that decision over and over again. Whether it's a ZBA makes a decision or somebody else, I'll repeat to make that decision until a governing body changes my mind or gives me a different decision to make. But at this point, if someone comes in and says, what's steep slope, I'll say X. And then when they come to the planning board for a subdivision, you guys will change or amend that. And then I'll try to relay that information in a consistent fashion to the next applicant that comes and asks the question. But like by having a definition in there, it becomes clear to them what they can and cannot do. And then the planning board would still have purview when it comes to that point. But up until that point, they have a little bit clearer idea of what a steep slope is that they're not supposed to use in their calculations, or erosion, or what the 3 sections that it comes up
Exactly.
currently.
We're done with steep slopes?
If y'all are okay with that definition, and the
Yep.
board is in agreement to look at doing that, let's do it. Okay. Do you guys want to take a vote on it, or are y'all in consensus?
Steep slopes.
It's
There'll be language come down the road we can look at. So,
Right. So do we want to move on with some type of definition?
Yes.
For steep slopes?
Here, I have a definition. Let me see if you can you see my screen at all or no?
No,
Put on there.
it's pretty bright in here.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, I have a definition what a steep slope is. A steep slope is a hillside with a grade of 15% or more, which means the elevation increases by 15 feet for every
Oh,
100
that's
feet of horizontal distance.
It's the same one you had.
that's the one we're seeing on the screen
That's
is
off that sheet, right?
yeah,
Okay.
is the old one here.
Careful with that one.
when's enough?
I'm new to this.
Don't break it.
If there's are you saying
You
there's a
break it, you
different
own
one?
it.
If there's a different definition, I'll get together with John after the fact.
No, that sounds good. That's off that Nashua
50%
thing,
is what-
right?
You know,
Yeah.
it's rise run. I mean, that's what it is.
Right.
That's a steep slope, and what we want to do is we got very steep slopes, which be the second part, is the one that would cause trouble.
Yeah, we can add to that too. What a steep
25%
slope is.
or greater. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
It's up to the, I don't care what the definition is. It just makes it easier for me.
Just
to-
having a definition.
By having
Howard.
definitions.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll come up again.
Yeah, we can always visit
It
this.
comes
You're
up
just
a
looking
lot.
for bumpers to stay
Exactly.
within.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
John had a photographic memory, so he could say 6 years ago, the planning board said slopes were 17.5%, and he keeps that in his mind. It washes out in 5 minutes. I wish I had.
like the
that
rest of
skill.
us, right?
Right.
Okay, we done with that? Next, we'll go
Yeah.
to, next one is farm animals. Do we want to do animals tonight?
Yes and no. I just wanted to bring it up because there's a case. It's still kind of an ongoing case. It's in, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but it's in court right now.
Is that the
But
one?
there's
Yeah,
a definition
the-
of farm animals and sizing of farm animals. I tried to do some due diligence on it. I talked to UNH. They didn't want to touch it because it's farm and all. They say a goat is a goat, a sheep is a sheep, a cow is a cow, no matter what the size, is what I was told. And so I know that the zoning board wanted me to bring it forward to the planning board to discuss if, honestly, I don't know where to go from here because I've looked at all the resources that I have, unless other people have other resources, or it could just be that a case thing, case by case issue. But it's really like a regulatory of a size. Is it a pet? Does that make it a pet? Or is it still considered a farm animal, essentially?
One way I've seen it defined in the past is the presence of a hoof as opposed to a foot or a pad. So like dogs, cats have pads on their feet, like a hoof or a horn style foot, I guess if you want to call it,
Right.
was the defining characteristic on if it was a farm animal.
But is the question that is, or is it, can I have a pet goat?
Right.
That the question?
So I think it's a little bit of both. Like what
Sometimes goats-
distinguishes, I guess
You
what
probably had something to
distinguishes,
do with this.
yeah, an animal, whether or not if it's a pet or if it's, I hate to say livestock, but I mean, that's really what it is. Like, even though it's may not be used for livestock
Thank you.
purposes, is it still considered a farm animal?
Yeah, and the problem really arises is are ducks, chickens, geese, turkeys, bunny rabbits all the same? Is a goat and a sheep, whether they're stunted by growth or design, is a horse and a, so we've got horses, cows, pigs, sheep, and similar animals in one category. So whether it's increasing the categories for different animals, if it seems fit, then again, ducks, chickens, rabbits are tiny, turkeys and geese can get big.
Those are considered fowl.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So there is a defining characteristic of them.
But they're still listed as.
So tweaking our definition for making categories of fowl,
Livestock, the definition of livestock, it actually references farm animals as a point.
Yeah, so
in
that whole
ours,
listing here
in general or in ours?
follows on there.
According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary.
Where does my pet llama fall?
Right.
Livestock,
Yeah.
also known as a farm animal.
But that's where the padded thing comes in, right? They're padded, aren't they?
I don't,
I'm gonna
I
cover it
don't
with
know
a
if they are.
I'm gonna cover the hoof.
For some reason,
Well,
Get socks, little mittens.
So beyond tweaking the definition, if it seems fit, is also if it's legally allowable to restrict it in certain types of subdivisions where the lots no longer support farm animals. I don't know if legally we can, but I would love to look into it. Like we restrict home businesses and conservation subdivisions, I'd be interested in a similar regulation too.
I think it's a good idea. I think if it's under 2 acres, you shouldn't be allowed to have farm animals.
I'd go a little bit smaller in my opinion, but that's up to the board.
Well, our town ordinance is 2 acres, so that's why.
Because people like a couple chickens. I don't have an issue with a couple chickens to have eggs on a half-acre piece or something. But when the people get 60 chickens because they want more eggs and want to sell them for a couple bucks, that's where it becomes a problem. And
Well, I think that you might be able to handle that,
Way
Jamie, by having,
inflation's going.
having setback,
Need
having
chickens.
setback to the living quarters. In other words, if I have a pen for chickens, it can't be right on the property line. You get setback for that. So if you're gonna have that kind of stuff, it's gotta be pushed,
Yeah.
away from the property line so that you're not impacting your neighbors. So you could have
What-
setbacks.
Chickens.
You could have
Jamie, do you-
setbacks for,
Jamie, do you already do that with zoning? Like if it's over 200 square feet,
yeah, and most
your
chicken coops
permit
would not.
process
They're not
Yeah.
even
fall
close
under
to
that?
200.
Oh,
Right,
that's
with
true.
most chicken coops would, so tweaking that a couple spots would, maybe.
but even the grazing areas,
Tickle
if
that.
you're gonna let them graze right on the property line. If I'm next door and, what's the side setback? 25 feet, 30 feet?
20 on a conservation subdivision.
So 20 feet away, they're right on the grazing right on my property line. I'm not happy with that. So I think there should be a setback from the property line, where they can live or graze or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, can you read fencing or something?
Innocuous.
You-
It's the rooster that everyone complains about.
A lot of towns won't allow you
If
to
you
have
have free range chickens, they're just walking in your property.
Right, a couple Rhode Island Reds aren't my concern. It's
Yeah.
the noisy one.
Yeah, did we have regulations on roofs?
So what we have right now for regulations isn't, that is kind of vague because it calls it as agricultural use, even though it says it's like commercial
Rules
keeping of
violation?
farm animals. And that there's a rate, like the keeping of domestic farm animals, what's allowed.
Right.
Um,
I know.
And that's
Okay.
how we usually have in the past have encompassed larger ones too, so.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
also-
if people want a rural community, we would
Right.
Yeah.
expect
You-
that there
you
would be
want-
animals.
Yeah. I mean, these
What
5-acre
about
lots are
mo-
looking more and more appealing here.
Yeah, what about
5 acres
a
with
more
chickens
better
right on the property
definition
line.
for
Yeah,
what
yeah.
like a livestock would be versus in addition to farm animal? Like you're
Say
saying
that
the
again.
pad versus the
Definition
hoof.
for livestock? Okay.
Like maybe adding a definition for livestock or something like that along Andy's line of, is it a pad or is it a hoof? Like kind of thing, like it doesn't really matter what
I
the
don't-
size is. 'Cause
Yeah, I don't know what we're trying to do here, like with a mini goat, like, is it?
Yeah.
So
Need
what-
to
we-
restrict it to a.
We have
farm
someone with a
animal?
mini goat that says they're their pets, and so if it's a pet, you can have hundreds. You literally.
But if you look at the definition of livestock, it specifically says animals kept or raised for purpose, for use or pleasure. That
Right.
would be considered pleasure. You can
I
call
think
it a
that
pet,
would
it's pleasure,
like having a
but it's
definition
still
of that.
livestock.
So why is
Having a
why is
definition
your
of
dog not?
livestock would help.
So if you
A
can't
dog's not livestock.
Why would a dog not be livestock if you only keep it for pleasure?
Because when you look at it, then it gets into, bear with me here as I.
Well, dogs are registered by the town and allowed by the
That's
town.
what Barbara said. Make them register them if they're pets and not. But I don't know if that solves the problem of the neighbor who complains. And I mean, this is on a wooded the one I'm thinking of is on a wooded 2-acre lot. It's an
Yeah,
issue,
but you have to be careful where we're agriculture all.
Yeah.
that's-
Yep.
Yeah, there's some state stuff
Definitely.
that come into play, but
Horticulture.
State is
Chickens,
pretty,
I used to sell
pretty
them.
liberal on anything that's called agriculture.
They are. John, you're exactly right. Because when I asked for more guidance from NHMA, that's what they
They even say
basically
you
told
cannot
me.
you cannot use
can't really
your
regulate.
regulations to over-regulate agriculture.
Yep.
That's
Right,
right in the state
exactly.
law, so.
We should have a definition of what agriculture is. That's a good idea.
say that again, Ron. Sorry.
We should have a definition of what agriculture is.
I know.
Probably is.
Read my
Kinda-
notes.
kinda
Read my
nice
notes.
hands, actually.
My suggestion.
Well, we do have a
In there.
definition for agricultural use.
Yeah, but we don't define how you get that.
Exactly.
And that's
True.
my suggestion. My suggestion has a definition for that. In my suggestions, I cover
point.
that.
You can love.
Did you check with the state law on that? Cause they
You're not
changed that,
snuggling a cow though.
that you
No,
don't have to have the,
it says
I
love
think they
and
changed from that
affection. I can-
50% thing, which had been
There was a picture.
And they encourage you to do other things on your farm, like overnight
I was
guests
sorry if I had to
and
learn.
give
Be
tours
my
and so forth.
town.
So,
That's a good point.
There you go.
Well, so you gotta be careful with that one.
Right, exactly. I think
Define
that's
what
their
it
point.
is.
They want to have places that look like farm.
No movement
but are
on it?
businesses.
We'll pick 50% and.
Yeah,
Anyone got language,
Let's-
you want to bring it up or not, kick it down the road?
Yeah,
It's up
let's
to-
move on from this one.
Take it down the road.
Kick it
Yep,
down the road.
thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see what the law says.
Okay, after farm animals, we go to Barrington Wetland Assessment Method. Just supports 9.6's special use permits.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it back up. I reached out to Conservation Commission and I haven't heard back yet what direction they wanted to go to present to the board, but just let you know it's on your, I guess, radar of some sort. I know they've tried practicing it a couple times.
Yeah, we didn't hear how they did with that. And
I heard one was not really favorable on the results, so
It feels
just kind of
like
more
they
to bring it
didn't
up.
comment on very many applications that came
No.
before us, so they may not have had enough opportunity to use it.
I think we should push this out another year, give them a chance to have more
Yeah.
I would agree.
experience. Okay, Vanessa, we're gonna bump this up to 26.
Sounds good.
Okay, next one, require active recreational components in subdivisions. For example, playgrounds or additional items. Anybody?
I know we talked about it before, and that might be a bigger thing that we want to tackle in the future, but I didn't know what the appetite was for the board on that.
So additional items, so that could be trails, because we do have a committee in
Right.
town looking at trail interconnectivity. and
Right.
That might give it some teeth
Um,
to do that.
yeah, trails and parking, if they provide parking. I had a note here, just no pickleball because that is causing a lot of
Lots
trouble
of
everywhere.
Pickleball, it sounds like you're being very
A
prejudiced.
lot of injuries.
Injuries?
No, the
Well,
noise,
noise.
the neighbors.
The noise.
Kidding.
It is,
Realtors are commenting now that it's detrimental selling homes.
yeah.
They're,
If they,
Right up there.
Pickleball courts.
Lady in
close
Rye
to
lives
it,
there
if they're
house
within
like
100,
times, and nobody will buy
500
it.
yards of
But
one.
that requires infrastructure building. Trails.
No, yeah, I was just joking. I'm sorry.
You're talking about
Sorry
a
about
playground.
that. Let's move on.
Well, this one, before we move on,
All right.
if we are supporting that, I would put a size requirement above 10 things,
Yes.
so don't push it on somebody who's doing 2 or
Right.
3 or 4. So more than 10, more than 10 lots, then
Then
you're
a 3-lot subdivision, they got a playground.
Yeah,
They gotta put
and a
in.
trail. I mean,
Well,
We don't have room for the houses.
10,
It's
15,
located.
something, something, but not, there should be a size there, above this many, then you're required to do it.
previous versions of the zoning ordinance did require all subdivisions to put aside open space. I can't remember when it was taken out. It was in there, I think, when I was on the plan. No, I don't know if we took it out. It must have been just before, but it said all, and that space could be used for that. So if that was in there at one point and it got removed, to have open space on all subdivisions. So whether, I can think of one.
They just say recreational components.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be appropriate to all. It was in the past.
Could be more than just like open space, like for active, like a
Use.
portion of it be open for active or passive recreation,
But
i.e.,
it's in
I guess,
sub-
playground or something.
How are we
Trails,
defining
etc.
passive recreation? Because
I'll have to get some
Passive
definitions for you,
recreation
but
actually
passive
has
is-
a term
Yeah.
that's used in the current use regulations and by SELT. Hunting, fishing, cross-country skiing,
it's
snowshoeing,
And so that
To-
implies
and-
hiking, walking.
yeah, and bird observation and nature walking. Those are the 6 components everybody uses as passive recreation. In other words, no ATV.
ORVs, ATVs,
Yeah.
things of that sort.
Right.
So
So if we follow the state regulations, we'd be safe, but I'm not sure what the active.
So it's, I mean, for me,
Recreation-
at
active
least
recreation.
saying passive recreation.
Yeah, these are active recreation. That's what's kind of. Because everything go ahead.
Well, and that could be the active. It could maybe just be in like the town center or village art. Like they're planning that
Well,
big
that's
park
true.
down there.
Yeah,
So thankfully that opportunity arose, but there could
But
be
that's
other
town, yeah,
developments
that's the
going
town
in.
land, but.
It's not a subdivision.
Yeah.
So when I think of active recreation, or, I mean, now, like, technically is an e-bike classified as active
How about
recreation?
street shooting on your land?
I don't
Can
think
you do
biking
that?
was on your list for passive, right?
No, it isn't.
Right.
So it would be
State does
consider
not
any
allow
kind of
that.
biking, I guess would be active.
And the
State
big
doesn't
thing
allow
now is
biking.
a lot of people are using electric bikes and there's a
Well, that's
pushback.
why, that's what
Pushback
I'm
on that too,
saying.
yeah.
I mean, between scooters, electric
Yeah.
bikes,
Right, so.
And then the caveat that it's open to the public is always one that needs to be crossed. If it's a 3-lot subdivision, it most likely wouldn't be open to the public. You know, it would be a playground for the people of that subdivision. So.
But with fewer and fewer kids, I mean, the
No,
playgrounds are
just
not
using-
being used.
Even if it's a
True.
50-lot subdivision and it's not open to the public,
I-
you know.
my general comment is I agree with Ron, where I think like we set the threshold at like 10, and anything above that has to have a measure of recreation.
Just leave it, just quote recreation unquote, and let others figure it out.
You could put it in as active or passive. That way it gives them an
Okay,
option.
okay, yeah. Did you hear that, Vanessa?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
So something similar to language in the open space requirements of town center, where all developments provide at least 15% of open space for recreation. You know, it'd be some language like that for all.
Yeah.
Instead of just in the town center and village, you'd move it to the all section.
yep.
So let me ask the question, do you want them to actually do something with it? Or do you just want them to say, here it is, have fun, or it's there? And then who's able to develop it at that point or build it out once you have it there? Because you could just say, look, I've got this, I'm blocking off 5 acres out of a 20-acre subdivision. It's there. But I'm not putting any trails in it. And they could send you through the swampiest, thickest briar patch there is. And there it is.
Yeah.
It's there.
It
Assumably
could be
it would
part
be
of
the
their
HOA.
requirements for their,
Well,
yeah.
So one of the other things we've
Put it-
talked about
to
is,
build
do you
it.
make it like it has to be upland? It's 15% of like upland or viable land. It's got to be something that you can actually recreate on.
I wouldn't necessarily put 15% on it. But you can do a playground that might be nice.
Yeah,
Big subdivision, you don't need 15% to a playground.
right. I'm just using that because Jamie had made reference to
Yeah.
the subdivision part of it. And do you want to have an allocated amount so that it pushes people to not give you the crappiest piece of the land that they have?
I think if you require recreational stuff, it gives us more flexibility to push back and say, this is not what the intent of the
Yeah.
regulations is.
Mhm.
So I think the percentage, well, I gave you 5%. Then you can get into practice there. I think if you say it's gotta be, recreational stuff, show me what the recreation is there. You can't just be land. There's gotta be some recreational activity that can be supported on that. So I think leaving it that way is actually better for us.
But don't we want the residents coming to the $1 million piece of land for recreation that we just purchased?
But there's nothing stopping them from that.
Wait till the weeds and everything grow up and it looks.
But if I live in a subdivision, it'd be nice to have a playground for my kids, so I don't have to walk them downtown to use the playground. You know what I mean? If we got a big enough subdivision,
You're still having kids, Ron?
I'm not even,
Hey.
I haven't rent kids yet. But, a playground in the subdivision where the kids can walk down there.
But I guess for me, I don't see making that a mandatory thing.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, that's the big
if
thing.
you don't want to live in a neighborhood because there's no playground, go somewhere else.
Yeah, so suppose you have a
That has
62-year-old,
nothing to do with us.
you can have a jungle gym if the subdivision's for 62-year-old and older.
Well, now it's to be a fitness component for them.
Could
Is to
be.
getting up there and
But
They
a
do
trap
have
being-
adult, they do have adult
would there be a
exercise.
everything has
Equipment.
handrails to walk with.
Yeah,
exercise equipment, yeah.
It is very popular in Canada and a lot of the cities that every development has to have a public recreation component, so, I mean, I'm just throwing
But
it
they
out.
also have to maintain themselves.
Pardon me?
They have to maintain that themselves in
Correct.
perpetuity.
So if we had this in here, it seems the easiest thing for a developer to do would be default to a trail.
Yes.
Well, Bob's saying
That's
that,
good.
let the market decide. If playgrounds are popular enough, Developers will put them in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
his-
if there
that's
is a demand, they would put it in.
Why are we telling them to put playgrounds in?
Well, the zoning sets aside the land for the developer to do that, or the HOA in the future to make it more attractive. So, you know, it goes both ways.
The
If,
HOA
if
should-
you, as a zoning, and that's why I say previous stuff that was in there, if you as the zoning, you know, the planning board decide, or the voters decide that you want every tract to have a little piece that someday it could be there for them to add to it, but.
I think I've been persuaded by Bob. Let the market decide.
Let the market decide.
Let the market decide.
Okay,
So,
Vanessa,
so we're eliminating this completely?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what Bob suggested. We can vote on
Yeah,
it.
I don't know. I want the option. I'm really committed to getting trails that connect all through town. So
I think
where's
it's-
our teeth
I think
to
it's another
do
way to
that?
do that. We can offer density increases if they do that. That's a different way to go about it. I think
Right.
that's a.
That's
better-
a lot. I feel like offering density increases a lot
But that's what
to
they love.
get.
That's what
Well, I
they love.
know, but
Do you offer one more lot than would normally be permitted, or,
Yeah.
I mean, cause hey, that's one lot's 200 grand.
Yeah.
Right.
right,
Please.
we get it. Trail. I don't know. Feels like it's not very even.
all right, you want to think on this one?
This is another punt? Punting like crazy.
But yeah, it sounds like to me you guys want to think it over. That might be more appropriately addressed as we go through
Well, we
the
can bring it up at
trail
our next
subcommittee.
time we do this.
Yep.
Well, you want to see what, where's everyone leaning? I think Joyce likes it. Bob doesn't. Where are you, Scott?
To have something on there, because I think just having land and saying people can go enjoy it, it's hard because you're walking through whatever. Right? And so having some level of infrastructure feel.
Yeah, it doesn't, recreation, let's get rid of active, because active suggests something.
Well, we don't know whether we want it at all, so
Oh,
where are you?
Well, I'm trying to say,
Where
can
you
we
aiming?
make a consensus by removing a couple of things?
I don't know. I'm indifferent, I guess.
I think we can, if somebody comes in with a prime piece of land that's gonna connect to, it was near a trail system,
Right.
like that not mentioned subdivision from earlier, we could encourage the developer. This would be nice to see
Right.
and push them that direction, but I think requiring them to
Yeah.
have an open piece to, okay, go cut trails. I
You want more wording, a recreational component would be encouraged in all developments?
you're saying encourage, why even have it? That's not a regulation.
I
Well,
know.
that's,
Well,
the
but
old,
it does
the-
kind of alert them.
the old regulation used to say, all required, all may be required by the planning board.
May, use the term may.
So they could come in on notice that you may require that open space
I
on
mean, I think
all.
That's the way I would look at putting it in there then is,
May.
the planning board may require
Yeah.
a.
It's the most vague and frustrating on one side, but it solves
It
problems.
gives us a little leverage.
Right, and then you
to
could
say,
say
hey,
if
we
something
want
comes
something-
up, you could do this.
I have a question.
Yeah, all right, I like that better.
We're gonna go that way, all right?
I will take less than 3 minutes.
No, go ahead.
Who's liable if a kid gets hurt at
That-
one of
that's-
these playgrounds? The homeowners association?
They'll have to have an insurance policy.
I mean, it's no different than open space now with all the HOAs, I would imagine. I don't know how those are.
I'm pretty sure with open space, there is a
That's
waiver,
different.
Like a no.
there's an.
If
yeah,
it's in
and
current use and it's a recreation area, the state covers you. Unless you have an open hazard, like an open well or something, somebody falls in, everything
Timmy?
else. Pardon?
Timmy?
Yeah,
Still
Timmy.
down there.
I thought it was Sally, but
No, Timmy.
different hole.
Just hate having regulations that say may.
May.
Right.
Yeah.
You, what does that mean? You're not regulating
Well, I
anything?
think with Andy.
But you
was-
might.
It may be this, it may be that.
Yeah, and it's leaving Jamie to be the first one to answer, and then they come before us and we say, oh, no, we're gonna require it. Well, it said may. I don't know.
The consensus says nobody wants to require it, and if they can put softer language in, they would go with it. Is
I
that
think,
kind of
I think if it's close to a recreation trail, something like that,
Yeah.
we can say that's a, a high value thing, we want you to connect to that. I think
Well,
that,
But you.
Yeah, so
you
then it's
really-
on us to kind
Yeah,
of know where
so,
those high
no,
values.
yeah.
But you really can't in that, because they can tell you to go crap in your hat.
Exactly. Well, I'm getting an attorney because it says may.
right, but
Well,
before they go to the
may
attorney
gives
route,
you something that
they
the
do,
other
they do a
may.
calculus, how much of a pain in the ass is this versus what's it cost me of an attorney?
Yep.
And I think if we say something that maybe is a little on the edge, they will decide whether to push it or not.
And
But
if you
they
let
will-
them
they'll
use the
comply if
lot
it's not a big deal.
calculations and stuff like that, it's still part of the lot calculation where you don't start restricting based on that little piece. And it may just be a connector trail in the back. I can't remember. I wish I could remember the one. There's a couple of them in town that they're the weirdest little, it's like a 2 acre thing and it's got an acre and a half sitting out back with nothing on it.
But you can tell when you talk to them whether that's a big problem for them or not. They're gonna fight.
Yeah, and somebody brought up, like when we were talking, like one of the Young Road people was talking about there's an access to the back, but it becomes a territorial issue between landowners because it's not well defined or it's not clear, and then they start being like, no, that's my land, you can't. This is where I tend to say I support it from the standpoint that, okay, it gives a very clear and delineated access back into it. And I mean, I'll be candid, I'm a hunting, fishing kind of guy, and like there is just you're rapidly losing all of that in and around here. So creating access to allow people to do that is, I think, an important component.
So you go with the may part, may not require, or
I may support that.
I'll try and find the old language and see if it makes sense to bring it back.
okay,
Okay, yeah, if we could find
can do
some
that.
language that fits with everybody.
all right. Next one is authority for the minor site plans to be approved by the town planner.
Change the language to staff if you guys are interested in it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Just because that way you can still get approvals from department heads and other things like
Right.
that, but the case in hand we'll bring up is there's a couple, 3 or 5. Yellow Dog, if anybody remembers that one, they had to come for full site review to put up a gazebo. Wildlife Encounters, he wants to do some stuff in his house and we keep telling him to go to the planning board. And, he's like, it's my house. It's like, oh, you gave up those rights when you came for site review.
Right.
Sorry. Toy, what's his, one stop trailer shop over the hill and through the,
Yeah, that's still going
yeah,
on.
so there's many of instances where people have home businesses that expand and then they get into this little caveat of, do I spend and go for site review? And, many a times, like, what was the one that came up? What was the one that just went through recently? I can't remember, but, sorry, where they took up some of their parking that was part of their approved site review, for residential use, so it wasn't looked at, so there's mixed components to it, but allowing the mixed use on residential creates another problem of what we have here for little stuff. Whether the planning board changes their regulations for mixed use to more clearly define the residential and the mixed use at the time of planning board approval is one option. And the other option, that Vanessa, Barbara, and John and I have all discussed is, having some in-house authority, for small stuff.
For the minor things like the gazebo or
Adding a deck on
Picnic
the house,
tables.
I'm
a
trying to-
deck or outdoor seating or I don't know.
Where's the definition for a minor site plan? I'm trying to, just so I can,
That would,
like, how are we deeming it's a minor, whether it's a minor, I forget what the criteria is.
Yeah,
for
that's
minor.
2.6
Yeah, I'm getting there.
site plan regs.
yes. So, it might not be minor site plans, it might be minor site.
Yeah, I couldn't quite think of a word as
Yeah,
quickly
minor.
put on there.
Saying in subdivision?
Minor changes.
Yeah, 'cause we don't have
Site
anything
plan,
for
2.6
zoning.
in Site plan.
Too many. Well, site plan, I have non-residential use and multifamily. 6.
Major or minor.
It's 2.6.1. Is
In
the
zoning,
Site plan,
no, in the
page
site
11.
plan, in the site plan review regulations, we don't have anything in zoning for it. Determination of a minor site plan, and then the criteria is 2.6.2 for what is, which I don't propose everything like change of use should still be a planning board action or something, but like if this is currently what it is, and that still comes before the planning board, but there could be other things like I said, for the gazebos or
But that's not what the
Type things.
proposal is in front of us, so.
That's why I was trying to explain a little bit, just
Right,
because the
so
words, the authority of
wording
minor
probably
site
isn't
plan
correct.
convolutes it to think that it's for minor site plans in whole, so it'd be, for,
Non-significant changes to existing use or something like that.
yeah,
You need to
something
be-
with a residential piece.
I think you need to come up with another word for that other than minor.
Yeah,
You're
I don't
right.
think it fits in the minor
No.
site plan.
No,
No, you're
that's,
correct.
For it, but the wording's
yeah.
gotta be.
You know, because like this is mixed use and you compare that to, wildlife encounters mixed use, very different. If someone comes over here for a building permit, I'm certainly not gonna let them put a deck on the back of this place. But if, wildlife encounters wants to put a deck on his house, I don't have an issue with that. And it should be able to go to some sort of staff process as opposed to come to the planning board, to put a deck on his home. That's like he wanted to put a chicken coop previously. And I keep using him as an example just because it's fresh in my mind. He wanted a chicken coop for himself, for his own chickens, but because of the site review and it was animal in nature, we told him, no, go back to the planning board
Mhm.
because it could be misconstrued that that's part of your wildlife encounters.
Well, I think that Bob's right. I think in general, we're in favor of it, but that language is a problem. It's gotta be defined more tightly and better defined and more tight. But I think the concept, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just looking for suggestions on language if you had
Yeah.
anything. If anybody's got anything. On what they'd want to relinquish, if that's the right word.
Minor site plan. Yeah.
I can probably salute some of it, something maybe along the lines of in commercial developments, something or another. I'll have to come up with something. I don't know. I don't know off the cuff.
Yeah, because like I came up with a dollar figure for the class 6 private road that we got approved. If it's below a dollar figure to not make them go through that whole process, even if it's, the category 1, to avoid that process to get a disclaimer and a road maintenance to put up a shed.
Right.
Doesn't make sense really for everybody involved to go through that process for something like that. So, I don't know if dollar figure makes sense.
I just say like non-significant or something like that,
Right.
some language like that.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the dollar figure piece because I look at some of these that have come in and have been modified and, like because it's a closed application, I don't have any issue talking about, well, like one stop trailer is like, that started is.
That's
I'm
actually
just
still
gonna-
open. The subdivision part's still open.
Oh, I wasn't talking about that one. Sorry, that
Okay.
in that regard. Like the original approval was, oh, there's going to be a half a dozen or so trailers here, and they'll never be parked. And if anybody's had to deal with that with a truck coming down the road that's unloading on that road, or you're trying to waiting for him to back up in, it gets a little nerve wracking.
I know that Jeff said they weren't in compliance with the original approval process, so
Right.
that's a good example of where, little steps can lead to,
Yes, suddenly you're a long
Right.
way
Yeah.
from where you started.
Right. And we're certainly not talking about that, but if he came in and said, I wanted to add a 200 square foot shed.
but it's gotta be taken into consideration what he's already done too.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And that's, I
This
can't
is-
remember the application.
this-
And that's
Talking
probably
about
why it's
the
still at the
shed.
planning board level.
And no offense, but wildlife encounters could very easily be the same thing. Like, oh, I got approval for this. Well, I want to close down this other operation to move this stuff here, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and it just becomes this expanded run where, like, it's no longer really a residential. It's not subservient to the residential purpose at that point. It
Yeah.
becomes the primary operation as opposed to a secondary operation. Excuse me.
Okay, how are we leaving this?
How about,
We
could we
talked
do
about
something with
correcting
authority
the language.
for minor site plans to be approved by the town planner?
I'll
I
I'll
was
work
gonna say
with
something
Jamie and
about having
maybe on
discretion
something.
between
Right.
multiple
Yeah, that's why
department heads.
staff.
Yes,
Getting rid of town
approved by
planners
the
and
staff.
Yeah.
That way it's not just one singular person.
Right. But it should
Because
be-
I know your head, Jamie, and I know you might start approving things that should be before us.
But it also, we shouldn't be putting them in a position where you have somebody coming in and saying, yeah, but it says town staff can approve this,
Right.
when it's really not what town staff should be approving.
Minor
In the opinion of staff, it should go to the planning board.
The words minor subdivision should not be.
No, I've already got that crossed out.
You
Um,
guys come up with another phrase, another buzzword.
we'll work on language for that. How's
I
that?
think it's case by case.
Yeah, it is, but you know,
Yeah.
Gotta be some guiding language.
Can be
Yeah.
approved, but can be approved by the town staff.
Maybe.
Or
Maybe.
may be approved.
Maybe.
Otherwise, it has to go to the planning board. How about that? Yeah.
what about?
That way nobody can say
technical-
it's right
technical-
here.
Technical review group looks at it. So I know, I think other towns do it that way.
I don't think that's a whole lot different, yeah.
It's kind of staff, it's kind of staff.
Yeah.
So our
It's just
technical
how
review
often do they
group
meet?
is not, Jamie, our technical review group is not set up to be that formal for that approval process.
Okay.
I'm not sure you want to tackle that quite yet, since not everybody likes to meet as it is.
I mean, we're trying to streamline these simple
We're
ones.
gonna let you guys work on the language on this one.
We're trying to
We'll leave it
unburden
at that.
you,
Let the staff handle it.
hardworking volunteers. That's-
Well, honestly, I want it more for the residents. Like Yellow Barn, there was
Right.
no need for them to waste so much
Oh, yeah, I
time
know, that was.
and have to wait. Or
And the money.
even the barbecue place, putting picnic tables out. I mean, that should have just been approved in-house and do it.
Yeah, so trying to come up with some sort of threshold
Yeah.
and criteria would be helpful to the
Well,
customer.
I think it's case by case.
I think,
Somebody may
I think
say
it's good for the
money.
residents, it's good for us.
Yep, agreed. All right.
Okay.
Next.
Conservation subdivisions.
Conservation subdivision requirements.
Mr. Chairman, if you want, I can pass over to Ron now, because I know Ron had some comments on
Okay.
his things. It was just kind of more of the discussion that I didn't want to make sure I made those discussion points on there.
Okay, Ron?
Well, I think there's basically two that I'm aware of. One is going from 20,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet. And then there's one that I think has been discussed recently, which is changing the buffer to increase the buffer on the frontage and reduce the buffer on the sides and the back. So that there's, less visual impact as you drive by. I think those are the two that I am aware of that were,
Yeah, there was some discussion of increasing it, the front buffer to 150 feet for more screening.
yeah. And then dropping the side and the back to like 75 feet or something like that. And they'd make out on that because there's three
Because
sides.
that's a big thing, people seeing these things.
It also depends where you see it from.
Right, if you're
Well,
the
it's from
neighbor,
the
you don't
town-
want them any closer.
Yeah.
Well, I had added, I have added
Well,
from the town
remember
road.
the buffer is more than the setback requirement already. So, and it requires to be a vegetated buffer. So this is not reducing the side setback or any of that stuff.
Well, but to a degree it is, because it's one thing when you get one house next to you. It's another thing when you got a conservation subdivision, you're gonna have 10 of them all lined up down there.
Want to do it just to take it off the back? To leave it 100 feet sides, 150 in the front and.
Well, if you're the
75
guy
in the
that
back.
abuts them in the back, you're
back,
still
yeah.
pissed.
So what?
I said, if you're the guy that abuts them in the back, you're still
Well, the
pissed.
back is always where
The
the.
neighbor's
space
always
is.
gonna be upset.
That's where the
Yeah,
space
the
is.
neighbors, you can't, it's.
They're never gonna be
It's
happy.
on the
Right, but why should
frontage on
we-
the town road. That's what
Why
we're
should we
looking at.
why should we make someone else's property less enjoyable?
Well, then,
Everybody feels, a straight up subdivision, the neighbor feels the same way. Whether it's conservation or not, the neighbor always feels the same way. Every application that's come through, the neighbor or someone on the board is the one that has the problem with nobody across town cares. So you gotta ask yourself the why. Why the conservation subdivision? To conserve land.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's still put out. Everybody wants to be the last person, then shut the door. Nobody wants the next house. Meadowbrook was, good sized lots. The guy, I've been walking my dog there for 20 years. Why would you let him put houses there? Say thank you for letting him walk your dog.
Character, now someone's moving next to me.
Right. So I just think the question for me is why? To conserve land. Do you want to, the whole point of the conservation subdivision is to conserve land and reduce road infrastructure. Town cost for road infrastructure and impact to the environment and conserve land in perpetuity.
Everybody wants the rural
I'm
character.
with Bob. I don't like the way they look. And so by tweaking that front buffer affords some but then you add to the road infrastructure, which is contradictory, but I'm, personally, I'm fine with it. But I always ask, what's the why?
The why is, I think the conservation subdivisions are not well received. I think it's the visual impact when they drive by. If we can get a little more buffer and we get a little less visual impact, I think it would help the acceptance of these things.
I also had, in addition to that,
I agree to an extent, but we can talk about something that came before us in design review?
Yeah.
So off Oak Hill.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, that's not a front buffer where that road's going in, all those people's backyard, you'd be reducing that buffer.
Mhm.
So, and when you're doing these subdivisions, the conservation subdivision, they're clear cutting. It's house on top of house on top of house.
Right.
So all of a sudden, now these people look out their back door and they're looking at all these houses on top of each other.
Which was Meadowbrook as well. You look at the road that was, I forget what the road is, it's one over. They went from having forested to, like you said, a clear cut
Yep.
shot right across all that.
But it's not their property. I mean,
You're
the
right,
person
it's
causing
not.
the problem on Oak Hill is the person selling the land.
Well, I understand that.
Mhm.
And all I'm saying is in lieu of, I'm all for increasing the front buffer. I'm just saying, well, let's not give up the side and back.
Right.
no, I don't want to give it up. I want to just increase the front.
Yeah.
Or you could
Okay.
say, if under the opinion of the board, the front buffer at 100 feet is not sufficient, we can raise it to 150. We have
Should
the
it be
same
maintained?
regulation in our wetlands
Should the front buffer
regulations.
be
Well,
maintained?
can they cut it down and put in new trees? Or do they have to maintain?
No, maintain the existing greenery.
The problem with that method is everybody cuts it, plants something that'll die, never takes care of it, and there's no method for enforcement to go back.
Make sure that they're.
That's the
because-
trouble, I know, Turbo Camp's gonna do a great job, but it's the same issue there. They needed to get rid of it to do the work, and then they gotta try to put it back, right? So it's always that give and take with a development in that nature. I think the trailer guy down the road here was, his vegetative buffer, he took down and planted some trees, they die, and then you mow them down a couple times, and now you got grass. And to
Right.
go back there and force them to put trees back in and try to grow them, that's very difficult.
I mean, the part that you guys don't see is like when you pull into, using TurboCam as an example, you pull in and there are maples all the way lined up through there. We had a very clear plan that they're not to touch the maples or disturb those maples because they've got 20 years of growth, and we want to keep that consistent look and the view. And then as we add this new building, we're expanding on what that all looks like and how it goes in. So there was a lot of thought and a mindful approach that went to conserving that property in a way that we minimized the impact of what we were doing. People look at it and they're like, oh, it's terrible. But there's all this other land that we're not touching.
Yeah, but
Right.
people complaining about that, just complaining. There's
Yeah.
nobody living on 120.
And I don't think there's any concern about a big company like that. I think we're discussing the
Yeah.
conservation subdivisions
Right.
being plopped
Right.
in the middle of a
Yep.
neighborhood, clear cutting and not putting anything back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that will be
Are
an
we,
issue.
okay, let's check on consensus. Is keep the 100, but 150 in the front? Is that where we're landing?
Or under the opinion of the planning board. You don't want to do
I'm
that?
with Bob. I don't.
All
think
right,
that's-
let's do 150 if you're not happy
Okay,
with
let's
that.
do that then.
I can live with that.
On the roadside.
Keep 100 foot buffer everywhere except in the front.
Now, how about also
Okay.
not allowing any access except through a subdivision road? In other words, you can't put driveways through the buffer that you just created, like some people have attempted to do.
What's the purpose of that?
To keep the buffer. If you start putting 20 driveways in, you lose the
Yeah.
buffer. Look at on Toll End Road there,
Yeah, but.
house after house after
John, I
house.
think the example you talked about, CBA gave.
Those have shared driveways on 2 acre
Yeah, yeah,
lots,
yeah.
aren't they?
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
I think the example that John's talking about, the ZBA waived that requirement, so there's nothing we could do about it anyway. That was waived by the ZBA, remember, the buffer.
Well, we had regulations and we stick by our regulations. We should do that. And I realize the ZBA will just,
Okay, but
Roll over and let them rub your belly.
I think that,
You really get in trouble when you say that.
having it in the regulations means people will know it's there before they come in with a plan. What
okay,
do they
so,
decide they
I mean,
want?
they gotta go through the buffers anyway, because
For one road.
one road.
That's the whole thing you were talking about. They should always be on interior roads. Weren't you pushing that?
Yeah, but our plan says it should be 2 roads, loop in and out. So 1 road, I think is.
Well,
Well, you can
Yeah,
do
no,
a
I
single
mean, you
road,
can
but
do
it's
a
gotta be less than
cul-de-sac.
1,000
But I
feet.
wouldn't say a single road. I mean, our regulations say 2 roads is better.
2 roads is better.
Yeah.
But if you could do 2 roads,
Yeah.
they couldn't
I
do
mean,
2
A lot of
roads
people
here.
don't, but 2 roads is better. And the fire chief likes 2 roads anyway. Everybody likes 2 roads better.
I'd like to point out that most people use examples that maybe aren't good examples, like Toll End Road. A lot of those lots are 80,000 square
Right.
foot lots. And you hate the idea of it. You use it as the example of what you don't like, but that's a 2 acre lot. You're going to adjust 2 acre lot. Like Deer Ridge is probably the nicest development around.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm talking only about conservation
What's that?
subdivisions.
Problem with Toll End Road?
Yeah, that's what I mean, but anybody, like people out here say they hate this. I can't understand why, because it's so far back. You don't see it unless you drive in there really. But to me, it seems like a perfect example of conserving land, but it's a source of heartburn for lots and lots of people.
But like you said.
And I wouldn't want to live there, but
But we always say, yeah, you hear this, is this consensus for thousands of people? Or it's some loudmouths yakking about something? They go on Facebook yakking about
Right.
something. And I think we pay attention to this. We get 50 or 75 people show up these town meetings for things. And it's like, well, that's the people do that. They put the little dots on all these little maps. This is, well, it's the consensus of the town. No, it isn't.
It's the consensus of 50 people.
50 people. We get 6,000 voters here, 4,000 don't bother showing up. But they are voting. They're saying, I trust what you guys are doing and whatever you decide is fine. So that's the consensus.
So on the conservation plan, because I think or conservation
plan,
subdivision,
just
because I think that's an important topic that we're talking about. The yield plan will often reference back lots, and I'll call it, I'm referring to the back part of a lot that may require a wetlands crossing, a stream crossing, but it has uplands, so they'll count that. I have seen other towns, Manchester, for example, where if you're going to count that in your yield plan, you have to get an approved crossing to count that in your plan. So you have to show that you can develop it and you've filed for the permit and gotten the approval to cross it to count that as uplands. And that helps discourage people from just saying, oh yeah, look I can get 6 more lots or 20 more houses.
Just had that discussion, didn't we? There is a wetlands crossing on that yield plan. Half the road is in the buffer, wetlands buffer. I mean, we should push this. The problem we ran into is we're gradually changing this, but the early regulation says they just show a conceptual plan. Conceptual means they just take a topographic map like the Grand Canyon and drop all these little rectangles on top.
But then you have to dial it back to the
That's what
why.
Yeah, well.
Do you want to conserve land, increase housing stock, or do you want to discourage development?
I understand, but.
No, I mean,
you
that's
have
the
to
question.
start with a real yield plan, though.
You don't have to. You could. The planning board that created that thought that was a perfectly acceptable message.
Right.
So you got to ask yourself the why. The why is to conserve land. If that's still the why may change, and that's fine. If we decide that the why is now to discourage development.
Yeah, but the why though, Jamie, is I can do this, but I'm gonna do this instead.
Yes.
You gotta prove to me you can do that.
But no, that's the point.
No.
You did it previously, and you don't have to. It's what you want. and
I
it's
can
great.
do
But you
75
don't
lots.
have
I would
to.
do 75 lots on the conventional thing. You look at it, it says, no freaking way you do 75 lots. So why am I gonna allow you 75 lots on in a
Because
conservation?
at $200,000 a lot, it becomes more realistic. When the economy crashes and there's 75,000, no, it never happened. But the point, the question, like I said, it's the why do you want to do it? To discourage development or conserve land?
Well, because
or both.
think
It's being a
the intent of the yield
responsible
plan.
land steward.
I think it is too.
That's how we get
If
to
you
the
want to be a
numbers.
responsible steward of the land, you're not going to lay out a yield plan that has 10 lots in it just for example, that you got to cross a 200-foot wetland to get to the uplands to say, look, I can get 8 up there, but I could only get 3 up front. And we have done some approvals on those that are currently under development that you would never count that upland because the access to it is so unattainable.
But in that example, if DES gave you a wetland crossing and then you
Then-
allow it,
then that's a whole different
Well,
issue.
we have financially viable as well.
Right, but it would not be financially
Technically,
viable.
it has to be technically viable.
Yeah.
And financial.
Technically.
Financial is questionable.
yeah, I mean, how do you prove
And
financial
even the
viability?
technically viable
if somebody's got to go through the process of permitting a 200-foot wetland crossing to get in there, and they got to get it approved, and they got to show that they could do it and all of that, the likelihood of doing, yeah,
Probably.
they're not gonna do it.
Attempting to do that. There was a case from 2008, the Supreme Court in New Hampshire said in analyzing the yield plans, it has to be show feasible conventional subdivision, has to be feasible and realistic.
Right.
That's the,
And
that's
it's our
the
language, too.
Supreme Court.
That's our language now too.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the intent of the, why would you make them do a yield plan if it didn't have to be something you would actually do? You know what I mean? That's, to me, it's not, it doesn't make sense. I'm gonna make you do a yield plan, but it can be totally unrealistic, you know? You can make it up and we'll approve anything. So you can, the intent is if you can do this many lots here, you could do that many lots, and you would do as many lots, we're gonna give you that many lots in a conservation subdivision. I think that's the intent.
But if
So
the
to allow
lots
them
don't,
to say that you would never do that, but to allow it over here, I think it's inconsistent.
but if
with
the
law.
lots also violate our way of laying out a lot, you can't count that either.
Well,
I mean,
you're
I
right.
think you brought that point up in a couple of them.
Three of those
Three of
last
those,
week that
yeah.
we talked about,
Right.
where I'm like, this is not.
So I know
configured
this
as
is kind of
conventional
awakening
lot.
these people that the board has changed their opinion on yield plans. We've got to be a little more realistic and
Well, and I
is
think
that feasible?
we have all been educated enough, and most of us have been sitting here long enough now that we're
See the crap we're facing.
right, and we've gotten pretty good at knowing our regulation. And don't get me wrong, we've let a lot of turds slide through that probably shouldn't have. And just because we weren't necessarily on top of it, and I am guilty of that as much as probably anybody.
I know Ron was sick and gone.
I know, and
I
yeah.
kind of passed one too.
So-
Regret it.
So like I look at this and I'm like, okay, if we're really thinking about it and how we want to do it, I want to make sure if they're going to go provide us a yield plan, can you actually build that yield plan?
That just seems really reasonable.
I mean, not can you,
No, that's
would you?
Right, would you?
Anything can be done, but would you?
And the other part is when you consolidate it down, it saves them a ton of money.
And what I would say to Jamie is not why, but why not? Right?
Yeah, as long as you ask the question, I mean, I think, I don't,
Bobby Kennedy. Why, but why not?
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Right,
Just
like,
kinda
oh, I can
jump
show
back
you
and-
this yield plan that looks fabulous. Would you ever actually go, could you really do it? I don't think so.
Well,
And certainly the public was like that.
Coup Farm's not gone, right? That's on in front of us. We could talk about that.
I don't know.
It's sale pending.
That one,
I don't know who the buyer is.
that one had
They-
three bridges to the back lots. Now, the ones on Tolan Road or Green Hill Road, what was that? How many million? Was that 3 million?
For $1 million for that little bridge?
It's like
Yeah.
3 million for that little bridge. So he's gonna put three bridges in to access 25 lots in the back. So, 25 lots times that, 6 million worth of bridges to get to lots that are worth,
In all fairness, municipal prices versus like a developer price are very wildly
well,
different.
still, he was gonna spend at least $3 to $5 million to access lots that were worth, $1.5 million. And it just didn't, it was clearly, there's no way you do that. There's no way you do that.
That's when I really saw like the yield plan. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So where do we stand on this? Conservation subdivision
I
requirement?
think there's a lot to be
You
reviewed
want to go home.
in there.
Well, I don't want to necessarily go home, but move forward.
Well, let's take it one at a time. 20 to 30,000 feet. Where's everybody on that?
You're saying increase the lot size
Everyone's on
requirement?
from 20 to 30.
In a conservation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
conservation.
Okay, everyone's on board. Everyone's on board. Now,
All right.
next
unanimous.
one is 150 in the front buffer. Was everyone on that?
Everything else is.
Okay, we're good on that.
How about no driveways on the front? They have to go through a subdivision road that,
I'm okay with that.
okay, unanimous?
Let's just describe that a little bit.
No, roads, but not driveways. Roads.
Yeah, all lots have to
Roads, yeah.
only be accessed from a road that is created by the subdivision. What do you think?
So it's just a subdivision access.
But that's
coming out
not-
on the road.
So we're totally changing our regulations. Because one of the options, Young Road being the example,
I know,
the original that met.
right?
A
is-
frontage road is
it's
described in the ordinance as a preferred method, and now it's contradictory. But
But you're gonna have to
I just-
redo that whole thing.
Using the town road for access, yes, I think that's something we'll have to look at. That's my opinion, I don't know.
Well, the frontage road is a road. It goes and they access it from that side.
Right,
That's,
so
that's,
again,
that's
so-
consistent with regulation.
right, well, and again,
Careful, you're
back
on
to,
a slippery slope.
back to my point where, you know, I don't
What's
care one
the-
way or another, but it's the
90%.
view, my view, and that you're trying to discourage conservation subdivision is how it would be viewed by a developer or the public. So if that's,
By putting a buffer in.
by
and not
creating
allowing
more
it to
onerous,
Violate the
this is
buffer.
the second cycle to create more onerous ruling around conservation subdivision specifically. So it's the opinion, so when developers look, and, you know, I don't care one way or another, I'm pointing it out, and I'll give you my opinion, but the optic is, and I think it's realistic to say that you're trying to discourage conservation subdivisions
By increasing
and
the 30.
by making it
size of
harder
the-
and making it more likely to want a traditional subdivision.
I don't know if
Trying to make
that's
them
the
more
case. I
acceptable.
don't think
Trying to make
that,
them more
I don't
acceptable.
think that does
So that's-
discourage it.
That's what
Because they
developers
save so
say.
much by doing.
Well, but they say that, but.
Yeah,
Instead of
that's- that's
80,000
not-
square
that's
feet, they're on the
Well,
30,000.
you say that, but yeah, when have you seen somebody come in with a traditional subdivision? You don't see a traditional subdivision.
When I start
Unless
seeing,
it's a two-lot
to
subdivision.
Andy's point, when I start seeing conventionals, some conventionals are not all conservations, then I'll buy your argument.
The last one we saw was that 3-lot one off of 126 near the Isinglass River, went up Porcupine Lane.
Yeah.
There's 3 houses up there. That was the last convention.
There's, there's plenty of benefits for the developers on conservation.
That was
Plenty.
what-
And that one you couldn't
3
really,
years
do-
ago.
yeah, and you couldn't really do a conservation subdivision.
No, you could.
Because
No,
of
I'm
the,
just saying that was
because
the
of
last,
the
that was the
road
last
requirement.
regular subdivision.
Yeah, we saw.
Did they have enough land to do a conservation
And when was
subdivision?
that?
No, there was
No.
no land there.
Enough
No.
land to do a
We're
What's
not trying to
the
discourage them, we're trying to make them
They
more
didn't
accessible.
have
year-
20
or 2
acres.
years
so-
ago. And
The
it was
acceptance is
like
not
you
good.
couldn't do a
We're trying to make it more acceptable.
So even
But I
if they
see what you're
wanted
saying,
something-
Jamie, optics, and yes, they're seeing the proper optics.
So 30,000 we already voted on.
Yeah, they're gonna say that, but show me it stopped you from doing it. I
Right.
mean, it hasn't stopped you
That
guys from
hasn't
doing it.
stopped anybody.
Well, because previously it was a preferred development style. That's why it was encouraged with the regulations that were in place, was because that's what you wanted developers to do, as opposed to not do.
But what they wanna do is less infrastructure, there's kind of density.
Yes,
There's
that was the
benefits
trade-off.
done. It's not stopping them, come on. I
Well,
mean, I don't buy that.
Future will show.
Yeah, this one here, what would it have cost them to use 120 acres that are now just trees if they did the yield plan? I mean, it would have been very expensive. That was the original plan.
Yeah, they
212 acres
built
to
that
use
out.
Every bit of it.
Right.
That's how they got the yield
Oh,
plan.
yeah, I didn't even fathom the cost of the roads to do
Yeah,
that.
right.
Right.
So
Doesn't
that's
mean they
what
wouldn't, it doesn't
saying.
mean they wouldn't do it, but.
There
The
is
town
no
is bitching
developer.
that we got 120 acres of trees. Everybody's, oh, they're taking the trees down. We saved 120 acres of trees. They just,
Well, so
that's why it's,
Well,
that's
the-
why we're pushing
the
for
pro-
more
the
buffer
problem
so
is
people
that-
can
that-
see.
that
And
open
anyone
space is
accesses
always in the
those
back
trees.
because they wanna put the road infrastructure in the front.
Right.
And that's why we want a little more buffer in the front, so
So
it
it doesn't
it
do
spreads out a
anybody
little.
any good. It's like on Oak Hill, they were using a back lot, backland
Is Vanessa sitting with us?
conservation
Yeah,
district.
she's VP.
Part of it is conservation.
She was
but
leaving
they
at
don't
8 o'clock.
I was gonna stay till 8, but I was seeing how this
Well,
shook
Should we
out.
be promoting
off
that,
at
or is
8:30.
it force them to do
Does anybody
something?
else have anything else on?
Conservation subdivision.
I did bring up the idea of of
So,
approving,
If we can
like,
support them in some way.
they have to get approval for crossings to count it in the yield plan.
If they agreed to do that, shouldn't they be forced to do that at some point?
I think that's
They're
tough.
gonna
State's so
ask us
slow.
Yeah.
State's very slow right now.
But what I'm saying is I don't know if somebody would end up
Which is making
doing
it
that. Like, they're just counting it in their yield plan because it's the easy way to get to get lots in the conservation plan. You might not ever approve those lots.
I think it's where the state is slow and, they're not gonna do that. I think the state would not be happy with it as well. I think it's a tough one.
I know 3 developers that deal with that pretty regularly, and they're
That's Manchester though. We're not Manchester.
it's outside of Manchester as well, but they're in talking with them, that was one of the things that they've looked at is when they're looking at their lot yield plans, they're like, well, I can definitely do that. The question is, am I willing to wait to do it, or do I not want to wait to do it? And I'm like, I'll do this, and that's satisfactory enough.
I think I wouldn't support that this time. We've already put a couple in here that are gonna be viewed as anti-development, anti-affordable housing or whatever. I'm not saying no to that, but I'm not saying, I think this year would be not the year to do it.
So it's a petitioned warrant article?
Yes.
Yes.
Rich.
Well, that's my
The
opinion.
idea of
Can
having
somebody
to
get Andy a
approval for
calendar too
uplands.
this year?
Yeah, like, don't let me screw that one up.
Now, that's my opinion. Is everybody else?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Are we done with
Done
conservation?
with conservation.
And we don't even want to talk about not
Sorry,
only,
I missed this.
how'd we do on roads?
That
We didn't
in
even
order
discuss
to
that.
count
On the
the
conservation subdivision, not allowing,
That one's processed.
requiring that they have an internal road to gain access for the lots.
I think that.
I mean, you were big on this one.
Well, that's because what we have recommended or
That's what the
preferred
residents.
Yeah.
already in there, and there is didn't
One large enough size.
conform to that at all. It was in the non-recommended, so that, I think we had enough to push against it.
Street right of ways are not allowed in the open space. So if that's open space, that front buffer is part of the open space.
I got
It wouldn't have private lot.
And to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, so street right of ways.
All right, we're all set. Good.
Problem now.
Moving on.
Move on, let's go. After that, we've got, we did, Steve Jeffries, that was that, topics from 12, June 12th. Jamie's up next with zoning and code enforcement. Attainable housing.
That's too deep a conversation, I think. My whole thing is adding zoning districts to change, so you tweak this stuff, not for the whole town, but for certain areas. You know, a conservation subdivision with less buffers and higher density in one area is certainly not appropriate for another area. And I think that we should have more zoning districts to tweak and amend numbers so you can have that more scaled out approach that we talked about years ago. You know, but to increase density and affordability and attainability, which,
Okay.
You know,
something to work on.
so
You wanna-
I'll kick that to the committee.
How do you plan to get to affordability?
Never, don't.
You can't.
Not until the economy.
Why are we using that word?
Because everybody uses it. It's virtue signaling. I bring it up because everybody wants to talk. Everybody brings it up almost every time you talk to somebody.
Second quarter housing sales in Barrington, $680,000 was the median price.
Right. Which is why when people talk about affordability, the reality of affordability is the only way you're gonna see that is if somebody actually puts a cap in the purchase and resale value of a property. So you have to put a deed restriction on what you can do, which actually creates affordability in the state. If I remember correctly, will actually, there's some sort of credit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've got it in our zoning
The
for
density
affordable housing for
Yeah,
caps
You
and,
get a density credit.
Yeah.
you know.
Other towns have, we have it too.
Other towns are doing attainable, which is a different percentage, so it gives them a little bit more profitability with a little bit of less
Other
bump.
towns define the density increase they'll allow. We do not. We leave it up to,
We got it in there. It's 80%, I thought, in our affordable housing section.
not the density increase. I'm pretty sure it's not in there.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure, Jamie.
did you want to talk about House Bill 1113?
Well, that'd be one of my suggestions. Right, we'll handle that separate if you don't mind, John. We'll go to mine later.
Steep slopes, we did, two table of uses changes. General residential district under multifamily housing, eliminate CP 6 and not allowed. I think what we got here is from our zoning, we have two residential districts. Essentially, there's no difference between them. Should maybe just merge them. Difference.
I do have
Only on the roads, but it doesn't have it on Beauty Hill Road. I mean, right side of Beauty Hill is neighborhood, left side is general. Under general, that's not my suggestion. This is
And
my suggestion.
Where's the table of uses that we're looking at? It's under,
page 95.
Yeah, way out there.
Too far.
Table
Yeah.
uses.
trying to make sure I'm looking at it.
Table uses.
Yep,
Page
95.
94 and the new regulations. Multifamily housing. Under general residential in the zoning, it says, general residential tend to provide opportunities for low-density residential development in traditional subdivisions, although cluster conservation subdivisions are permitted. Neighborhood residential, 2.2.2, is intended to promote medium-density residential development. I guess what I'm looking at is Winkley Pond. I mean, got a little street with all these little houses and somebody can come in. If they didn't have all those wetlands, can only imagine how much land, how many units they could put in there.
Well, they got as many as they did because of the upland in the back,
Right.
which further
Right.
Exacerbates the point that I'm talking about, that you should have to get it permitted
Right.
to do it.
So let's focus on this.
You
here.
would have
Do you
only
think there
gotten
should be a
two.
difference? Do you think there should be a difference in these districts?
I don't think it's a district issue as much as it is a land use issue.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in? Do you think it should, the general residential, in other words, you're saying both districts are the same essentially. They can allow the same things.
My only thing, I'd change 6 to 4 units instead of 8 units per building. Just for optic.
Sorry, you would change, which one?
The 6 that goes with the conditional permit.
Yep.
We allow 8 dwelling units per building. I think reducing it to 4, I think it just looks nicer and
Right.
forces them to do a nicer development.
So
Yeah.
Winkley could have had 8 units. Do you think you should have any apartments in those districts?
But they couldn't have 8 units because they weren't.
I said they could have if everything was perfect. Do you think
They
that
have
was
a-
appropriate?
Right.
Right.
I don't know why
And-
they
and
couldn't have it
that's-
all.
They did 4 and 2, right? They had to have
I
to be
would-
4 and 4.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't
Yeah.
combine them or what their rationale was.
They
but I'm
originally
just
had
saying in general.
5, but then
Because
they
you have to do a
reduced.
sprinkler system at that point, because once you go above 5 units,
No, they-
5 residential unit.
No, anything above
That's
2.
right.
Townhouses, they need that, they have to do sprinklers in that 4 unit. And they have to do sprinklers in the 4 units behind the Irving.
Oh, they do?
Townhouses
Oh,
require
okay.
sprinklers. The only thing exempted from
Are those
sprinklers are
two-bedroom
1 and 2
units?
family dwellings.
Those are 2-bedroom units, huh?
I couldn't,
Behind Irving. Oh, okay.
2-bedroom, I believe.
Well,
So anybody else want to chime in on keeping a general residential district pristine with single-family homes instead of apartments? You think
well, I
that's
mean,
an
I
issue?
don't, I personally don't think there was anything wrong with the Winkley development, other than the fact that the road was terrible. I mean, it was right
Okay.
up, it was right up at
All right,
155.
all right, no sense discussing it.
I mean, it was just the road. And
Well,
the,
if you did this smaller, if you looked at it, if you didn't have the backland, you only would have gotten, I believe, 2 units in there. That would have been it, because it was 3.5 acres.
Yeah, but what if you have 50 acres of land in the general residential district? And you
And-
could put in,
And it'd be they'd be doing a subdivision.
no, they could, well,
They
that's
could
what
do-
he's saying.
no,
With
they
a
could
conditional
do-
use permit, they could do.
they
that,
could do
apartment
the,
building
like the
if they
80
have-
units
if
here,
they have-
only they couldn't get 80
they need-
anymore because we changed the
They didn't
zoning.
get 80 period, because at that point you would be, you wouldn't be able to, you would be exceeding the allowable use of the area.
Right, so if, on a 50-acre piece, they could get 25 2-bedroom units, let's say.
Yeah.
If you had 2 acres for each one that was buildable, and
Right, but you can't,
And 40,000 for
Our-
every
but
addition
it-
a unit.
but if you look at our requirements, you can only have a you can have a primary unit, and it can be a multi-unit. Then you would have to technically do either you would have to do a PUD or a
Not in
subdivision.
the
on it.
general residential and
I
neighborhood
don't-
residential.
You can't put 25 houses on one lot.
it's, yeah, not, multifamily housing as defined is up to 8 units.
But
And it's
multifamily-
allowed with a conditional use permit, that's what he's saying.
but multifamily will trigger site development, site review.
Oh, yes, right.
So,
So you could theoretically do like what they're doing behind Irvin if you had a big enough piece in general residential with a conditional use permit. So the planning board would have to approve a conditional use permit to do such a development, but it's theoretically a possible.
Well, you couldn't really, theoretically, you couldn't do that because we changed the lot size requirement there, because that should have never happened in the first place, but.
Yeah,
Well,
they could
no,
all-
that was a density for, on the
Density, sorry,
40,000.
yes, you're
But
right.
in general residential, they'd still be under the 80,000 per unit.
and that
And
was-
then they could do the 40,000 for an additional 1-bedroom.
And that was
blah,
village
blah,
district,
blah,
that was
but-
village district too, so the density was village district.
Right,
They couldn't have done that in general district anyway.
could.
They could have.
Not that density.
Not that
But
density.
standard 2-bedroom home density could be put into a multi-family structure with a conditional use permit based on that same density calculation.
Well, you can't really do anything according to our zoning in the general residential, because it just says reserved. So,
Let's block those out.
All right.
But I think,
I'll go, I just want to step back because I like Jamie's recommendation. What was it you said, Jamie?
change
Right,
8
that-
units in a building to 4.
4.
It used to be, what was it before when they did that? It was like 16 or something. Wasn't it crazy? 12? We changed it to 8.
um,
And I think less is more. for
Yeah.
community.
Yes.
Yep. I don't remember what it,
But it was higher. I know we dropped it down.
Yeah.
At one
I
point.
remember like.
You want to put a
battling with
different
Marshall
footnote in
for all
there? Is that
kinds
what
of stuff.
suggested?
Yeah, change footnote 6 to 4 units per building would be my.
Yep.
Did you hear that, Vanessa?
Probably gone.
Yeah, she's there. Well, she's kind of there.
No, I'm
Good to
here.
drop off.
I just didn't know if that was a consensus that the board wanted to change it. So if you
Let's
know,
see, Scott.
Yeah.
if you guys want to go
consensus?
down the line
Wanna
and
go
see
down
if
to
it's the
4?
consensus.
Want to get on it for you? Want to get on it for?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go yes.
All right, yes.
That's definitely
That's a
consensus.
consensus
Okay.
from 4 to, I mean, from 6 to 4, correct?
From 8 to 4.
8
Oh,
to
8 to
4.
4, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
footnote, just need another footnote.
Either that or one of the others, 4 or 5, one of the other.
Okay, the only other one I had there in the general residential district, just make the nursing facility add a 15 so it complies with all the others. That's on page, hope I lost my table of uses here. Under nursing, nursing facility is it called? That's on page 96.
I'm good with that.
Where is it? Are you on, everybody agree with that?
Nursing homes.
On page 96, see how everybody has a 15 beside it? Parentheses 15.
No.
I don't feel-
Page 95, nursing facility. You've got the latest,
Nursing facility, yep.
okay.
Okay.
See how under general, there's no requirement that they comply with the DES regulations? I was just gonna add a 15 there.
Under, oh. Well, general limits them already, I believe, right?
What are they missing? Which one? Nursing facility, page 95.
CP. They all have 15 except for
Yeah.
general residential.
They don't
does
have
not
to comply with the DES regulations. Just add a 15.
Well, you can't get approval unless you comply with DES.
Well, it has to be in a regular, I know, but let's just make things look correct. You look,
You have on your.
sure.
To change to that, previous language be to
God,
be
it's like
consistent with the
pulling
definitions.
I'm with you, John. I'm with you on this one.
Vanessa, did you get that one?
Add parentheses
Yeah,
15.
96, not 95.
So that was from
Okay.
the note on the other that is there consensus that that's going to change?
The 15? Yes.
To add
Yes.
note 15.
Note 15, yes.
No 15.
Everybody agree?
Yes.
Add 15
Okay.
to the right of CP as other districts have that
Yeah,
footnote.
that just makes everything,
I forgot one.
no, go ahead,
Okay,
please.
Barbara had a couple, we talked about most of them, but one was,
Thing here.
a definition, in, when you guys change 4.2.1 parents 1 to the 60,000 of, to get rid of free of poorly and change it to the hydric A to match the definitions, which
Yeah,
is,
we gotta change the definitions. That's the problem.
well, free of, very poorly and poorly are not good definitions to use in zoning. So to change it to hydric A to match. the-
Why did we
vice
change
versa.
it?
But isn't very
That-
poor and poorly or what the
That-
like DES and
Yeah,
what
that's what
soil
everybody uses.
scientists
They got
use?
rid of the A and B because
That's
that goes
their
back to the
definition.
Right.
1980s.
That's why it was removed.
So then change the definitions vice versa, so they match, because one says hydric A and one says poorly and very.
Yeah,
poorly.
we didn't change the definition.
The definition needs to be changed in zoning.
Right, yeah, does.
Wait a minute. I'll be-
They had a New England, soil scientist convention that made that hydric A and B stuff
Yep.
way back, so everybody's getting away with it.
And they're using,
Poorly and very poorly, is the terms they're using now.
So the hydric A and hydric B are in the definitions.
yes,
Yes.
that
hydric
what
A
it
and
is?
hydric
Okay.
B are in the definitions, and
That's
they,
the change.
then they describe poorly or very poorly based on high intensity soil mass
So
for
we
New
just gotta
Hampshire.
change that head, yeah, change.
Change definition.
Okay.
Is,
I
and
just need to
that's,
know where the location is. That's all.
yep, page
look at it.
80.
80, yeah.
Okay.
But
cool.
that's what the board wishes, that it says poorly and very poorly and no reference to hydric A and
I
hydric
think
B.
it just is,
Yeah, as written.
As Andy said, that's the DES.
Yeah,
Okay.
we changed it last year because of that, and obviously we didn't catch it to the
That's
in the
okay.
definitions. Excellent pointing out to that.
What about 50 feet? Does anybody, where'd that come from?
Just Barbara was thinking, put that back to 50 feet instead of 75 for the frontage.
72% of the voters supported going to 75 feet.
I say stick with it.
Mhm.
I don't know, what we should wait a couple of years if you want to change it back.
Yeah,
or-
I wouldn't go
wouldn't
trying to
change it.
change what the
Change it.
voters
I
have
wouldn't change it the year after we
put
changed
forward.
it.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. Leave
What do you
it.
think?
The optics are bad.
I like,
Optics are bad.
If the voters don't know the answer, they leave it blank. We had
All right.
quite a few blank
Did
ones,
you have anything else in here?
Yeah, there was something not
no education on it.
4.1.4 parentheses 3. Get rid of that.
Business
I
shall
think that's
comply with
probably-
the site plan
That's probably.
regulations.
that's what we're talking about, staff
Right.
approval,
Okay.
and then the animal thing.
Then we were up.
Yeah, the animals.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody looked at the UNH thing that Barbara had submitted with animals, just to keep that in mind.
I did
I
not
gave
see.
that to John Hall.
And then,
It's on each of the copies.
I apologize for not
Here.
forwarding. I got one from the fire chief. I've been pressuring him to put cistern and regulations in, so it's not whatever the fire chief, so he had come up with 5 lots or more, requires a 30,000 gallon cistern located within 1,000 drivable feet of each resident within the subdivision.
Isn't
Also-
1,000 drivable feet already the requirement?
It
It's
is.
in subdivision, but it's not in zoning.
Oh, okay.
So it's only at the planning board level that you could require it based on his
Yeah, that's
input.
Good to have.
But to have it in zoning, then everybody knows it's required and there's no question about it.
So if somebody wants to build a house and there's no cistern there, they gotta go put in a 30.
Subdivide. Somebody
Yep.
wants to do it.
They wanna
5
subdivide their one lot
subdivision,
into
5
two
lot.
lots. All of a
Nope.
sudden now they
5.
gotta put in a
5
oh,
lot,
5 lot
5
minimum.
lot.
I'm
and
sorry.
over 1,000 drivable feet from water.
Why is it in zoning though?
It's a subdivision.
Subdivision.
Yeah,
It doesn't need to be
Yeah,
no.
I didn't get that.
plain and.
Well, wherever you, maybe it was subdivision that we were
It
talking
was a
about.
subdivision.
It is.
email.
Okay, yeah,
It's in subdivision.
all right, well, I'll
Let's
say
leave
it
it
for
there.
subdivision talk then. Just
Otherwise-
because there's no language in there and it's, some require it and some don't, they can be the same criteria. So it becomes convoluted.
I don't want ZBA
Vanessa?
waiving it.
If we
What's
get
that? You don't want to what?
I don't want ZBA waiving it.
Vanessa, another thing that we
You gotta put
raised recently was the size of the bulb on a cul-de-sac that apparently they've had trouble
Yeah.
plowing. This is the first we've ever heard of it.
Oh, the cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Both the road agent and the fire chief dislike the
I know they,
design.
but I
Oh.
think the people we talked to recently said they would increase the size.
Yeah.
We thought we should have a regulation get a plow out there, with the wing out, and the plow at a maximum, and figure out how wide they need.
I told both the fire chief
Geez,
and the
just
road
come-
agent, come up with a dimension. I'm sure the planning board would support you. They have no skin in the game if it goes,
Right.
you
Right.
increase the
But
diameter.
you're saying, like, quote, lollipop things, well,
They stated they'd plow it backwards because of the tightness of
why-
the configuration.
Well, because the angle of the plow, if you go in a conventional way, it plows everything into people's driveways who then just plow it back into the circle. So if they go the other way, it plows it into the center.
Right.
Is what he was trying to describe to me. And I said,
Yeah.
it's their regulations. I said, give them something. I'm sure they'll approve it. They
of
have
course we
no,
will.
no issues with it being, so they're coming up with something. And that's
Well,
where
they are working
that's,
on
and
it.
that's where,
Bigger, if I was a resident on the lollipop, I'd still want them to go backwards.
Right. Yeah, well, that won't matter.
and Rick had come up with ideas of, decreasing driveway access. He likes the shared access points, so you decrease driveways on the lollipop, but then it conflicts with the no back lots on some lots. So, there was a lot of things to think of. So I just said, make it bigger if you want it, or come up with something.
So if you go up the road and the road ends, if they take that house lot and just make it for snow storage, would you?
So that's the other
Happy
thing.
with it?
Yep. Well, I'll let him speak. to
Of course,
that.
then you'd have to back out, so you'd have to cut.
Right,
it
no, he'd
into
want a hammerhead with with
Right.
storage area.
Well, let's.
I mean, honestly, I think the drive around is the better option. on
Yes,
that.
they prefer that as well.
Yeah, the truck keeps moving. I mean.
Yes.
I think we can safely say, let them come up with language and we'll approve it.
All right.
Okay, so I had one issue that has bothered me under environmental impact assessment in subdivision. It says that it may include, the following things. So it's 7.6 and then
You want to say shall?
I wanted to say shall.
What page is that?
Page 28.
28, got it right.
Word may again.
Yeah, because one of our subdivisions came in
I
and.
have
Yes.
Yeah, I have that under
Nice
list
work
for
in
next.
August, guy.
All right, I'll catch you guys later.
Bye,
Have a good
Vanessa.
night.
Bye, Vanessa.
Take care. We'll see you on the
Have fun.
12th.
I'm good with that too.
Well, I'll see some of you tomorrow, I guess,
But other people.
sort of. Oh, in
okay.
person, hopefully the 12th. Yep.
All right,
11.
take care of yourself, all right?
All right.
You under
Thanks,
site plan regs
No.
in zoning?
Subdivision.
I mean, they
All right.
asked.
All right.
I'm up next.
Bill, are you finished?
Which
I
one?
agree. What do we want to make that, not May? Can't remember.
Shall.
Which one is that?
Shall, okay.
Page 28 in subdivision.
So-
under Environmental. Impact
Well,
assessment.
Oh,
So
just-
that they
Joyce brought it up.
shall have to do
Language in subdivision.
7.6.1 to 7.2.
Oh, shall be required.
So just write a sheet for Vanessa, because
Oh, okay.
'cause this-
It's been
everything
writing.
here is zoning, so just say
That's
we
a
just,
subdivision, so you guys can approve that one.
yeah. Yeah. If we remember to have it on the list, that's
Right.
the thing. That's all I'm saying. You'll
Yep,
remember.
I'll do it in writing.
That's why we bring you. You're the one with the most experience on the board, right?
No, I think.
It's just Andy?
Yeah.
He's ex officio. We
He's
didn't
been
count those
officio,
early
right.
years.
Yeah. Yeah, those years don't count. This is 6 years or 5 years as ex officio, don't mean anything.
Okay, Ron's got a few things he'd like to hit.
All right, my thing is right there. The first one we already dealt with.
Yep.
That was done. I forgot to do one in conservation subdivisions. They allow land without lots. And I should say attached drawings, I'm sorry. Not detached.
Remove that. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. To be attached. So the language I want to say is attached, not detached. So basically, if you have single family residences, I want you to have a requirement of 20, meet the requirement of 20,000 square feet. Remember,
30, changing to 30,000.
which we're changing to 30. Without lots for.
Without lots, attached drawings. that is-
Basically, remember that, one of the proposals, the first proposal, which is, I'm gonna talk about it because I've gone away from it. The first proposal for the one on Young Road, they had land without lots. So there was no property line.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Yeah, the
It's
con,
like it's technically like a PUD
Yeah.
is what it falls on.
And to me, it's okay for detached units to have that, but for
what?
detached units. The detached units, what, single residences, single properties, they should have lot lines. So that's
Okay.
just my, that should be attached, not detached. I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. Number 3,
So you're saying you couldn't do
Detached.
a condo development with individual houses?
so,
you can't do a subdivision with individual properties without lot lines. You can do a condo, multiple unit condo, you can do without lot lines.
so you're getting rid of the little drawings they have in the regulation with the clusters?
No, it says.
You
I'm
can
gonna
still do a
if
cluster,
you
but the
think-
cluster requires to be a multi-unit building.
If you have
Oh, yeah, but I mean, they're,
So if someone came in with a age-adjusted development with little tiny units and they wanted to put them close together so they didn't have all the setbacks, you wouldn't like that.
Yeah, no.
See,
Yeah.
my in-laws just moved into one in Epping and it's fantastic.
The one in Wells, people love, they're paying
this
$600,000.
is what you don't want, no lines.
I don't want no lot lines for if you have attached units where they're all attached, I'm okay with no lot lines.
These are all small individual houses in a neighborhood. I think there's 60 units. Then they have a community building with pickleball.
So who
And-
maintains all of it?
It's a condo association.
HOA. yeah,
So there's
condo.
no lot lines.
So
They
this
show
is,
the condo
this is
association.
on page
So it's
39,
not of single
subdivision
family.
regulations.
Well, no, it's the language right here. That's where it
And
is.
it's all
Oh, okay.
55 and older and
But my,
affordable.
let me ask this, Bob, if you got a requirement for a lot requirement from 20 to 30 or 30,000 square feet for a lot.
Get it.
This eliminates that, allows you to get away from that. You don't, that lot requirement doesn't apply anymore. I can do whatever I want. So you have a requirement to have 30,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet. This allows you to eliminate that. You have no lots. I can do as many as I want. It's gone. So
But you can't do
that
as
to me
many
is
as
totally
you want.
contrary.
No, that's not, the calculation's the
That's
same.
not
You still get the
calculation,
same
it's just
density.
a-
It's like a yield plan. You get the same density. You just
Yeah.
don't have lot lines for property setbacks.
Right.
Because then you have to have
Yes.
20-foot setbacks from every house and you spread it out and take up more land. It's just,
Yeah, but you don't have.
it decreases housing diversity and it hamstrings developers'
So,
ability.
But you can have less, you can less than 20,000 square feet too.
One of the ways I think that I tend to agree with what Ron is saying in principle. The way I think it would actually be better suited is if you had a size restriction on the building. Because if you're targeting senior housing or plus, you're really looking at something that is one floor and not more than 2 bedroom. Like, because you want to have people to be able to stay there and, you know, their grandkids can come visit and they got a room to stay in because I don't want them sleeping in my living room when I'm old.
Yeah.
But I would look at putting a size requirement on the building if we were going to do that.
Yes.
I
Does
had,
that make sense?
Yes.
I had imagined a cottage zoning district is what I had dreamt of.
Yeah.
Where that would be appropriate, where you have size restrictions on the house and, you know, you can age
There's a
restrict.
Cottage one they have in Dover with, what, 400 square foot house.
What kind of size you think?
What's that?
That's a whole another can of worms. There's a tiny house mess over there, in
That's-
my
I guess
opinion.
what-
What's Mrs. putting
what is the
500,
reasonable
500 foot
Size
is less.
requirement for a small
Studio
home,
apartments,
like 800 square feet,
$600,000
700
each.
What's our ADU? You can have up to
1,750. 750 detached.
Now, 750 is the
Doing-
footprint of the building.
Does it include a garage?
No, living
Cause
space.
I got 21,
So it's just.
I've got-
Space. We allow them to build something bigger and section it off as storage or garage space or office
even though
space.
they have access on the outside of the building, as well as interior access to the second floor.
It's like telling
But
someone they
there's no
can't have a
bathroom
second
up there,
kitchen.
right?
No, they can have a bathroom. There's nothing that says you can't have bathrooms. It's,
So they've
it's
got 1,132 square feet on that 750.
it's hard to sit in my seat and tell someone they're a liar. When someone wants 3 kitchens and you know they're trying, you know, what they're gonna do next, but there's nothing that says you can't have 3 kitchens.
So if we were to change the regulation to 750 foot footprint, that would be firm, right?
How do you do that inside of your house?
Yeah,
But-
that wouldn't work, would it?
You know, and again, where the state's trying to
I don't
push for
care.
2 and 3 ADUs and they're gonna set they claim they're gonna set a size. You know, it may be contradictory, it may be what
But
we
if we
want.
tried to
They
put
have to
3,
set a size.
No.
Not yet.
And we're not talking.
Well, they do
about
have a minimum,
ADU.
right?
Like right now, we're talking about primary residence.
Yeah, we went off on a tangent. It's ADUs.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
I agree, but I think the ADU is a good guideline to use for a size. If you're talking about
So
a
old-
residential component where you're not gonna
Detached
have
over
lot
1,000 square feet,
detached 1,000 or less square feet.
detached 1,000 or more.
No, you would say 1,000 or less.
For
You're
no
talking
lot.
about, you can't.
He's saying, he's saying you have to have lot lines if it's more than 1,000.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Okay, I will make that change.
But that's where I caution, don't put it in conservation subdivision. Create a new thing,
But that's where it is. That's where it is, Jamie. That's where it is.
but I think it's appropriate there. You know,
Well, I think we're changing that restriction, that allowance to be more narrow. It belongs there, we're gonna put it there. That's where it is. We're narrowing it a little bit. That's all we're doing. If you wanna put it somewhere else, that's a different issue. When we talk about tangent, I wanna stay focused on this one. I'm changing this one
all right,
thing
we'll have the board vote.
for dwellings over 1,000 square feet.
Could you make sure Vanessa gets the sheet from you?
I
somehow?
will.
And,
And
Change.
did the board vote on putting that one?
yeah, do you want to vote on this?
Consensus or whatever?
Where you
Raise your
got?
hand. Everybody,
Lot lines for over 1,000 square.
except Rob,
Yes.
Bob.
I think it should be a little bigger, but I could go either way,
Okay,
whatever.
Hey, we didn't go full tiny house
Yeah,
on
I
you
know,
here.
I
Come
know.
on.
that's coming next year.
Okay. All right,
Like
next
tiny
one,
bit.
I thought that would be easy, but the next one is a little more
Says the guy.
involved. There's a new House Bill. There's a new House Bill, House Bill 1113, so 3 1s and a 3. Says if you sell a property in a shoreline district, you have to have a septic inspection. And you have to replace it if it's not compliant. Doesn't, so.
And if you replace it, do you have to move it further away too? I think that was
have
part.
to meet whatever the.
You might not be able to move it further away
This is
depending
the
on.
it's not the house, it's the septic within.
I
the-
have one they have a tank on Caliph Island Road. They have to pump the tank every week.
Yeah.
In that case, if,
That's what I say, you might not be able
Yeah.
to move it
I
further
mean,
away.
there's an option, that's an option.
no, you can still put it in the 250 square.
all right.
feet. You can still put it in there, obviously. If your house is there, you can't move it somewhere else. But it's gotta comply. It's gotta comply with, you gotta put. it-
Right,
you-
yeah, it has to be, right.
Ours says now you gotta design a new one. I don't know
Now,
what,
they
I don't
gotta-
know what that is. You gotta design it, but you gotta have to put it in.
You don't know what that is?
I know what it is, but I'm saying, why are we designing it if you don't have to put it in? Make them put it in.
You have to put it in when it's reached failed status
Yeah,
technically.
it has to bother the neighbors and it's flowing into their basement.
No,
Well, the lake.
This language is taken from that.
This took effect September
I
1st.
like it. I think it's good for our lakes and with
Yeah.
all of the.
So that's what you always run
cyanobacteria
into
we
with
should
lake
restrict.
associations. We ran into that in Massachusetts. Are they there to protect the current property owners or to protect the lake? And you've got that fight. And you get these little teeny shacks and now we have 8 people living in them and they don't even have a septic system. They have a cesspool.
I mean, I think
And
that
it's just,
a lot of these cottages, like,
So that has to do with the open borders issue, but that's a whole nother.
no, but I think John's right. Back in the day, these cottages, whether the septic system met
let's not go there.
it back then, was questionable.
You teed it up. I was like, I'm swinging.
Well, and just with the problems with cyanobacteria, which are changing our lakes,
Yes.
so we can't use them and changing the economic value of our lakes.
Yeah, I
So
think
we
that
should be stricter.
cyanobacteria blooms are happening on Swains Lake more and more every year.
Yep, it's gonna just get worse. as
Well,
the
keep them on your
temperature
side
goes
of the lake.
I mean, there are other reasons too, but this is one we can do something about.
Yeah. I agree.
So that's, like I
You
said,
should have Title V like in Massachusetts. You sell your house.
this is the version of Title V.
Sell your house, you
This
have
is
to
the version
have
of
it
Title V.
inspected, just replaced.
The House
Tear down
bill-
every house in the lake
the
and
House
make them
bill is a
somewhere else.
version of
Good,
Title
we'll
V.
start again.
Turn it to the public.
Have it at Town Beach.
Turn it to the public.
2 lots for sale. Well, the town actually owns those 2 lots on Beauty Hill Road now.
Do you have a language for that, Ron?
So can we do?
Yeah, not on Beauty Hill Road. The town
Just
sold
looking
Beauty
at
Hill.
each property.
Those are 2 lots are for sale on Beauty Hill.
They were for sale at $800,000 for 2 of them.
All right, let's stay focused. Do we have support for this
But they
recommendation?
haven't paid taxes in 3 years. and they
Number-
haven't just put
Number
title-
3. Raise your hand if you have support number 3.
I support it.
All right, there we go.
So if you want, when the sale comes up, you can then deed it to the town for Town Beach and we'll name it after you.
There we go.
100 square feet.
Last but not least, number 4, if you have agricultural property, you were, as John said, afforded a number of rights that the state gives you. And my point is, if you have some definition what a property in agricultural use is. If I have a little garden, I grow some tomatoes and I sell them, do I have an agricultural property? You know, if I have a farm that I converted to a B and B and all my revenue comes from the B and B.
But it's farm to table, so I would argue if the land is supporting Airbnb, then, or.
You'd have to
B&B,
have-
Not Airbnb.
You would have to have enough of the food coming from your land to justify that. And I think any place that is where you have a residential or call it an Airbnb and in a whatever, good luck doing that. I know very few places that.
And my point too would be if I grow some tomatoes and I give you some tomatoes in my
Right,
my
that's not
my
agricultural.
my B and B.
Right.
Is that an agricultural property? Is that a?
Yes, I'm worried about, so what happens on a bad season? So we have.
Well, I got that in
farm
there.
and
I
had-
got it in there. It says you can average.
Oh, average over 5 years.
Did I say 5 or 3? Oh, 5.
But the peach people lost 2 years worth of crop.
So they can average up to 5. So
But they're clearly an agricultural, they're
Right.
trying to
Right.
make it as
Yeah,
agricultural.
where's
and I
the
don't want
why
it
and
be
what do you hope to
restricted
get? What's the
enough.
outcome?
Yeah.
What's the goal?
And you're gonna bump into state regulations.
I
on
want
this
to-
Really, very.
if you were given certain rights and benefits to being an agricultural property, we have to define what that is. You know, like I say, back to my example, if I have a little garden, I sell tomatoes. I sell, $20 worth of tomatoes every year. Is that an agricultural
Yeah,
property?
but
I would want to know what the benefit you're reaping by saying that. I don't, if there's I'm with Joyce where if you make it harder for the farmer to survive, he's gonna turn to the developer much sooner.
Yes.
Right.
If you let him skirt the rules, which, I don't encourage either, they're gonna try to make that farm go a little bit further.
I was gonna say, I actually think you want to,
But I think 50 is a good number.
you want to promote the farming activity because we've lost
Correct.
that.
There's very
within
little
our
farming
society.
in Barrington now.
This is
And
right.
if you
Compared
are
to
farming,
Lee,
you
which is
probably
little
have to have
farm.
another income to supplement this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm a little worried about it, Ron.
And I mean,
Then change it to 40. You know,
What do you,
to me, you
I
could
don't
have,
know what the magic.
to
calculation.
me, it's 50. If you're a business, an agricultural business, you should get most of your income that way. If you're really, that's your business.
I don't agree.
Take it as an
If I am a full-time carpenter, but I have a farm,
Whatever,
Right.
they'd be permitted under that use.
I mean,
Potatoes.
I would like to hear from someone.
Or if the wife runs the farm and the husband
and she's a
is a
lawyer.
successful accountant and
I mean, I see what you're saying
Yeah.
about not everybody can be.
I mean,
agricultural.
this is the epitome of where gentlemen's farms have come from is you end up with like the Steve Jobses of the world who are buying up these farms and they're subsidizing it all with other income. And they're taking all the tax break from it to offset tax burden in their other.
Do we
their
have that
work.
happening in Barrington?
Theoretically, not necessarily, but if you talk about the idea of offsetting, like you have a very successful accountant, lawyer, whatever, and then you have a farm and you're claiming a loss on your farm and you're offsetting your other business revenue. Yeah, theoretically, you could be doing that just on a really small scale.
And of 30,000 acres in Barrington, we probably have 250 acres of farms. That's it.
Yeah.
I would suggest,
It's not much here. I don't think
I know.
it's a,
I agree, but Joyce, I would suggest the peach farms are that way.
I don't think
They're
you're gonna
basically
get the
an event.
juice out
They're-
of the
they're making
squeeze
money
that you're
from
after.
Right, but
Squeeze out.
what's what's the other side?
Well, agritourism
More
is
than
okay.
it's supposed to, more than it's supposed to.
Houses.
right.
More than
Because
it's
I
supposed
just go there to buy peaches and it doesn't look like much happens in
Yeah.
that
to. Well, remember
space.
we had the,
So they are using it for events quite
oh, yeah,
often?
they're heavily, and they're doing it more than we permitted. They remember they gave us the brochure and what they said in the brochure was different than we permitted. So they're already going beyond but they're making their money as an event space. And that's fine. But
But it's in an
be
event
regulated,
space, in a farm,
be
in a
regulated
barn.
that,
So
no, my point is, you can still sell the farm part of it. But if you're an event, making your money from an event, be regulated as an event place. That's what you're doing. Be regulated that way. Don't be regulated as a farm. If you're not a farm anymore, you're your event space, selling the agricultural and the farm environment, but that's not where you're making your money.
But when does the event space become primary to the farming? Because the farming has been primary for years, and they added the event space as a secondary income stream. If it's taken over as the primary, you're like saying, hey, you got to come in and self-disclose. Oh, guess what? I'm making way more money doing this now. Like
because when they were here,
the
he's,
farm is still there.
you know, one of the sons, I forget which one it was, said, if anyone looked at my bottom line for me growing peaches, they'd tell me this is a failing business.
Right.
So the only way he can
With every
he
farm.
can sell peaches
Yeah.
is to have some
That's
more
fine.
things on
Be
the
a,
farm.
be an event space that's selling the farm ambiance. But you're not a farm anymore. If you're making money that way, you're not a
I
farm
like
anymore.
But how are you gonna monitor it?
trees, even though they're not making money out of it, I'd rather have them running in a wet.
I like it as a definition. But not as an enforcement mechanism.
Well, it's soft enough that, it's hard to enforce.
But
But you gotta have some definition. You gotta have some
You're
definition.
gonna have to get a court order to.
So,
Yeah,
let's
I'm
say they're
like-
making 99% of the money from the event space. Are they still a farm? At some point, you gotta say they're not.
But the thing is, they're not. I mean, they're,
Well,
well,
but
I
the thing
guess
is,
I don't know the
where?
number, but they have
Where?
it.
Is it 75? Is it 100? Is it 90? Is it?
I've
But you gotta pick a number. You gotta pick a number.
No, because they'll go to,
No.
but if they go to, if the option is to go to the Peach Farm Event Center because you like the
They
farm
are adamant they
atmosphere,
don't.
or you go to the old Frank Jones Center in downtown Portsmouth because you like going to a warehouse for a wedding,
To put it forward.
it's still the farm that's a draw and
Right.
causing that revenue.
But it's an event space with a farm only,
Yes,
rather than a warehouse only.
but how do you keep that as an option?
But the state allows them to have overnight guests. That's part of their income as the
If
farm.
they're a
You're not,
farm.
had nothing to
If
do.
they're a farm, once they become a farm, they have certain rights and benefits, I agree. But the question is,
It's about decreased.
We're gonna give the farm status to just anybody.
But it's
And now what are we gonna do? Have an accountant on
Ron
standby
wants to look at
review
everybody's
the books?
Ron has mentioned many
People make that
times, Ron
argument.
looks at everybody's books.
In the initial sense.
You wanna
yes.
come?
He has time. I don't want to.
$5.
I mean, they've got
And
what,
you
two hundred and
used up
fifty
all
peach
the-
trees,
the
I don't know what the
permit
number is, so
ends up
they're
happening.
clearly a farm.
Is those
Right.
lots.
2 years in a row they lost.
There were lots of
2
water
years.
10 years
Imagine
ago,
that.
and
Can't
they were
imagine.
easy
So they
access.
had to.
Lack of support for this one?
I don't know.
Lack of
We should
support
probably
here.
like- Lack of support here.
Lack of support.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
not,
that's consensus, okay.
sorry, Ron.
You know, I will take this off, but badly, but at some point we
You can
gotta.
put it as a petition article with.
Yeah, you can
Andy.
do
No, no, no.
He doesn't accept what the voters said about his, but he accepts what the voters said.
It should. We should define this. We need
Yeah,
to define.
all right,
what
do
this
you
is.
want to
I
adjourn
don't
and
care
we
what we
can?
define it as.
All
We
right,
have-
any more business tonight? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second that, whatever. Okay, you first did, I'll second it.
First.
I first did, I'll second it.
All right, roll call adjourning. All right, Driscoll, aye.
Yeah, we all on.
All right,